Hello friends. This is Fictional Vortex. How are you all? So in this video, we will see what if Naruto had the power of Venomous Spider. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Near the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Sound, formerly known as the Land of Rice, was the Valley of the End. It was here that the Shodaime Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and Madara Uchiha had their final clash against each other. With the valley having been formed from the destructive power of Madara controlling the Kyuubi no Yoko, and Hashirama using his famed Mokuden and top transformed Buddha. The battle ended with Hashirama being victorious and Madara being killed, while the Kyuubi was sealed away into Hashirama's wife, Mito Uzumaki. With the statues of Hashirama and Madara having been created at the site of their battle, being built on opposite sides of the newly formed waterfall and river that divided the valley. With Hashirama's built on the side of the Land of Fire and Madara's being built on the opposite, signifying his defection from Konoha. Now, after decades since their battle, another fight was being fought within the Valley of the End, with many similarities between Hashirama and Madara's own clash, with the battle being fought by the former teammates and friends, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. The reason for the battle was due to Sasuke having left Fort Konoha in order to join the rogue snake Sannin, or Orochimaru, to gain the power he needed to kill his brother, Itachi. While Naruto had been part of the retrieval team sent to bring Sasuke back, along with having promised their teammate Sakura that he'd bring Sasuke back, no matter what. Both boys fought with everything they had to defeat the other, until it reached the point of Naruto accessing the Kyuubi's chakra within him, entering the first stage of his Biju cloak, covering him in a fox-shaped cloak of red chakra. While Sasuke entered the second stage, gaining large hand-like webbed wings on his back. The battle soon reached its end, when Naruto and Sasuke used their strongest attacks, the Rasengan and Chidori, against each other. With Naruto scratching Sasuke's forehead protector and Sasuke stabbing his Chidori into his chest, before punching Naruto. Landing on the ground, Sasuke panted heavily, exhausted and low on chakra from the fight. Looking, the Uchiha saw Naruto landed on the edge of the river, with the blonde being unconscious. Seeing Naruto unconscious, Sasuke knew he could easily kill him right now, allowing him to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan, to aim the same eyes as Itachi and be able to kill him. But that would also make him no different than Itachi, along with doing exactly what his brother wants. And Sasuke was done letting Itachi decide his actions. Though Sasuke's eyes then widened when he saw Naruto's body falling into the river. Mentally cursing, Sasuke ran to grab the idiot before he fell in, refusing to let him die because of his actions. Refusing to be like Itachi. Seeing Naruto about to fall in, Sasuke quickly dropped down and just managed to grab him by the collar of his jacket. Tisk, even when I'm trying to leave, I'm still stuck pulling your deadweight, Sasuke thought, gritting his teeth to try and pull Naruto out of the water. Unfortunately, Sasuke soon felt his grip slipping, both from being exhausted from their fight and the rushing water fighting against him. Before the Uchiha could react, he lost his grip on Naruto's collar, with the Uzumaki's body immediately being carried away by the current. Damn it, thought Sasuke, unable to do anything, but watch as Naruto vanished beneath the water. Slamming his fist on the river's surface, Sasuke cursed the idiot for having to try and bring him back, leading to this. Knowing that Naruto was going to drown, Sasuke could only look at his reflection in the water, as his Sharingan transformed to the next stage. Standing up, the Uchiha took off his headband, before tossing it into the river as well, before turning around, and continuing towards the Land of Sound. Knowing he couldn't stay here any longer, or risk someone else from Konoha showing up to force him back. And considering how the Hokage liked Naruto so much, he'd be lucky if life imprisonment was all he got, after what happened, knowing he'd be blamed for Naruto's death. A few moments after Sasuke left the valley, Kakashi Hatake soon arrived with his Ninken summon Pakun, both trying to find any sign of Naruto or Sasuke. With Pakun finding Sasuke's scent heading towards the Land of Sound, with Naruto's ending at the riverbank. Worried about what this could mean, Kakashi followed the river hoping to find Naruto at some point, only to not find any sign of his student. Knowing if he hadn't found Naruto, or any sign of him, Kakashi could only accept that Naruto likely wouldn't be found at all. With his head hung in shame and sadness, Kakashi began heading back to Konoha to inform the Hokage of what happened. Though unknown to Kakashi and Sasuke, was that Naruto survived falling into the water and being carried out to sea. This was thanks to the Kyuubi using its chakra to make sure his lungs weren't filled with water and warding off any aquatic predators that'd eat the boy. So, Naruto remained floating in the middle of the sea, until eventually he's found. Unfortunately, before that could happen, Naruto's unconscious body was carried towards a massive wall of mist that stretched out for miles. This was known simply as the mist, a barrier that stretched all around the elemental nations, separating them from the rest of the world. No one knows where the mist came from, only that it's existed for as long as anyone could remember. Many people have tried passing through the mist, to find out what rests on the other side, only for all who pass through to never return, and are never heard from again. Leading many people to wonder if they made it to the other side or not, if they have remained trapped within the mist, or if they simply died after entering. Before long, Naruto's body passed through the mist, and not a moment later, Naruto's eyes snapped open as he released a silent scream of pure agony. Feeling like his body was tearing itself apart, while also trying to keep itself together. Unknown to Naruto, this was the result of passing through the mist, that anyone with chakra would have it violently ripped out of them. With Naruto now experiencing that very feeling. Mindscape. Damn you, boy, this is your fault, you and your damn obsession with the Uchiha. Kyuubi growled as it flooded Naruto's body with more and more of its chakra in an attempt to keep his chakra network intact, while around the fox. The mindscape was shaking and falling apart. Though the more the Kyuubi repaired Naruto's network, the more the mist tried tearing it apart, showing that whatever beings had created the mist, they made sure no one would survive passing through. I swear if we survive this, I'm going to kill you myself, thought Kyuubi, angry that it was stuck in this situation, because the brat couldn't just kill the damn Uchiha. And now wasn't only in danger of drowning, but also whatever awaited them on the other side of the mist. However, Kyuubi's attention then turned to a bright light that suddenly appeared before it. That grew brighter with each passing moment. While the shaking began settling down, then to the Kyuubi's shock, it saw a figure appear from the light. That's impossible, Kyuubi whispered in shock at who it saw. It was a young man with dark-colored eyes, short spiky brown hair, 2 locks of which were wrapped in bandages, framing either side of his face, while possessing stern facial features. His attire consisted of bandages around his forehead, a light-colored kimono with magatama adorned around the collar, held closed by a dark-colored sash, and underneath, he wore a black full-body suit. What shocked the Kyuubi wasn't just the figure's appearance, but that it knew who it was. Asura, said Kyuubi in disbelief at seeing the younger son of its creator, the Sage of the Six Paths. It's nice to see you again, Kurama. Asura Otsutsuki said, while smiling at his younger sibling, regardless of their species, as they had the same father. How are you here? Kurama asked, with Asura looking around the still shaking mindscape, while frowning. I'll tell you later, for now I need your help to make sure Naruto survives this, with his chakra intact. Asura said, Kurama remembering what was happening right now, and nodded, before resuming channeling its chakra through Naruto's chakra network to repair it. Asura knelt down and placed his right hand on the ground, causing a white sun mark to appear on his palm. Before all around them, the shaking stopped entirely, while the mindscape began repairing itself. After a few moments, both Asura and Kurama could sense that Naruto's chakra network was fully repaired, and not in danger of being destroyed or ripped away again, with him still being able to use chakra without many difficulties. With the danger out of the way, Kurama looked at Asura now wanting to get some answers. Asura, how are you here? Kurama asked, confused at seeing the youngest of its father's biological sons in the brat's mindscape. It's because Naruto is my transmigrant, having inherited my chakra and will, just as Hashirama did before him. Asura revealed, shocking Kurama to hear that this brat had inherited Asura's chakra. Then to Kurama's further shock, Asura fell on his hands and knees, then bowed to it. Kurama, I am truly sorry for what happened to you and the Biju, for having been caught in mine and Indra's feud. To be sealed away like this. And I know I have no right asking this, but please, I ask that you watch over and guide my last descendant. Asura requested, with Kurama looking down at its creator's son. Stand up. The old man's son shouldn't bow to anyone, except him. And yes, I'll watch out for the boy. Kurama said, with Asura smiling in gratitude, before noticing his body beginning to disperse, showing he would be returning to the afterlife. Thank you, Kurama, and farewell. Asura said, placing his hand on the ground once more, as he passed on his blessed mark to Naruto. To help him along his journey. With that, Asura faded away from Naruto's mindscape, while Kurama laid down looking at the spot, where its sibling once stood. You got lucky brat, very lucky. Kurama muttered. It will honor Asura's request to watch out for the boy, but that didn't mean they'll be friends. If Naruto wanted to earn Kurama's respect, he'll have to prove it through his actions. For now, Kurama will ensure that Naruto doesn't drown or get eaten by anything, until he gets to land. Later real world, opening his eyes, Naruto blinked a few times, before raising a hand to his face to shield his eyes from the sun. Sitting up, Naruto looked around in confusion at where he was, only seeing he was in a place with a lot of snow. Standing up, Naruto winced as he felt a sudden soreness in his chest. Looking, Naruto frowned when he saw a hole in his jacket and shirt, along with what looked like a faint fist-sized scar in his lower chest. Naruto then noticed a white circle on his right palm, which only confused him more. What is this, and where am I? Naruto wondered, while looking around again. Deciding to just start walking away from where he was. Naruto hoped he'd be able to find some place that can show him where he is. So, Naruto walked through the tundra for what he guessed would be around 20 or 30 minutes, and so far hasn't seen any sign of civilization, or anyone else. Though just before Naruto gave up and tried going in a different direction, he spotted what looked like a mine not far from where he was, much to his relief. Hopefully, someone there can tell me where I am, thought Naruto as he began heading towards the mine. Unfortunately, it seemed Naruto's luck wasn't the best, as before he could reach the mine was. He was suddenly surrounded by people wearing strange armor, and pointing even stranger metal objects at him. The latter of which Naruto could only guess were weapons, but none he's ever seen before. Hold it right there, animal. One of the people said, glaring at him, with Naruto frowning at being called an animal, and the hostility. Look, I'm looking for, and Naruto was cut off as he grunted in pain. When he felt one of the people slam their weapon into the back of his head. Shut it, freak. Now start moving, or else. The person said, Naruto rubbing his head, now getting angry at being attacked for no reason. Alright, I'll just leave, said Naruto, only to then be forced to his knees by the same person, who hit him, kicking him in the back of his legs. You aren't going anywhere, Faunus. Now either get moving or die, sneered the person, pressing their weapon to Naruto's head. Knowing he didn't have a choice in the matter, Naruto simply got up and began moving where the assholes were forcing him to go, all while wondering a few things, with one them of being, what the hell was a Faunus? Naruto saw that they were leading him to the mine he saw before, making him now regret going there to begin with. Sir, we found an animal out in the tundra, one of the people said to someone, who Naruto guessed was in charge. One of ours? Questioned the boss. No, he's not marked or collared. Probably just a freak that got lost, replied the person, who Naruto really wanted to deck in the face. Then put the stupid animal with the rest of them. Not like anyone will care if one goes missing, the boss said, before he and the others laughed, while Naruto was forced into the mine. Inside the mine, Naruto only became angrier when he saw that the workers were chained up and forced to mine strange glowing, colored rocks. Though what confused Naruto was that they all had animal parts, like ears, antlers, horns, scales, even tails. He also saw a few giving him looks of pity, making Naruto realize that these definitely weren't nice people. He also saw a white snowflake logo on some pieces of equipment and the letters SDC, showing this was some large operation, rather than just a single mine. Naruto's anger only continued growing as he had chains forced onto his wrists, ankles, and a collar put on his neck. It didn't. He helped that bastards were smirking smugly or cruelly at him, as if they enjoyed chaining him up like an animal. I swear, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to enjoy tearing these bastards apart limb from limb. Naruto thought, while stopping himself from glaring at them, doubting that'd help his situation. He then had a pickaxe forced into his hands, and being ordered to start digging, with Naruto doing so reluctantly. After resisting the urge to slam the pick into the bastards' heads. "What's your name, kid?" asked one of the workers, really a slave, with goat horns. "Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto replied, grunting as he swung the pickaxe. "Well, I'm sorry this happened to you, Naruto Uzumaki. You got any family?" the worker asked, with Naruto frowning at the question. "I don't know," Naruto answered, with the worker looking at him with a raised brow. "Well, where are you from?" questioned the worker, Naruto's frown deepening as he started to get worried. "I don't know," said Naruto, as he tried remembering something, anything, besides his name, only to come up empty. "What do you remember last?" the worker asked, now really pitying the kid, if he can't remember anything. "Nothing," Naruto said, after a few moments, now worried and freaking out. He couldn't remember anything. Time skipped 2 months. 2 months have passed since Naruto had been captured, and forced into what he learned was a dust mine, owned by the Schnee Dust Company. And since then, his hatred for the guards has only grown. They seemed to take a special enjoyment in tormenting him, using any reason possible to taunt him or push him around, trying to get Naruto to retaliate, so they could punish him. With the punishment ranging from simply beating him into unconsciousness, or even using a whip with fire dust and burning his back. What made it worse was when they found out about his healing factor, which made them only beat him worse, after seeing he wouldn't die so easily. But it wasn't just Naruto they tormented, he was also forced to watch as the other Faunus were pushed around, as well. Even sometimes forced to watch as some were taken away, sometimes they came back, and other times they didn't. When Naruto tried asking the other workers what happened to them, their expressions alone told Naruto that he really didn't want to know. Though with each pain and torture inflicted on him, Naruto's anger and hatred grew, and he swore that when he finally escapes, he's going to kill every last one of those guards. Along with getting revenge against the entire Schnee Dust Company for what they're doing to the Faunus. Today was October 10th, and unknown to Naruto, his 13th birthday. It was the same as it's been for the past 2 months, mining as much dust as they can. And if they didn't get enough, they'd be forced to go hungry that night, and mine twice as much the next day. "Hey, fox freak," suppressing his scowl at hearing this, and knowing the bastard meant him. Naruto turned, and saw 2 guards smirking at him. "Let's go," one of them said, grabbing Naruto's chains and forcing him to follow them. "Just wait, assholes, one day, I'm going to make you pay," Naruto thought, grunting in pain, when the guard behind him hit him with his gun. Soon they arrived at a room, where he saw some other workers, along with the boss. All of whom looked eager about something, and having a cruel look in their eyes. The reason became obvious when Naruto caught sight of a branding iron, shaped like the SDC logo, the boss was carrying. Making him realize what was about to happen. Immediately Naruto tried making break for it, only for one of the guards to smack him across the face with their gun. "Where do you think you're going, animal? The fun's just about to start," said the guard wickedly, as Naruto was pushed down onto his knees and his head forced up, as the boss smirked evilly and held the iron over a fire, making it glow red hot. "Try to hold still, animal, otherwise we'll just have to keep doing it, until I get it right. So on second thought, move all you want," said the boss, moving close to Naruto and holding the iron above his face. "These sadistic, psychotic bastards. They actually brand us," Naruto thought as his anger reached an all-time high, which also resulted in him accessing something once again. Suddenly the guards that were folding Naruto cried out in pain as bubbling red energy shot out of Naruto's body, burning them. Before anyone else could react, Naruto's head shot up, showing his now crimson-slitted eyes, elongated canines, and jagged whisker marks. Roaring, Naruto tackled the boss to the ground, while tearing the iron out of his hand. Smiling sadistically, Naruto then slammed the red-hot iron straight into the boss's face, relishing in his screams of agony, before his screams were silenced, as Naruto lifted the iron up and slammed it straight into his throat, crushing it. "Kill the freak," one of the guards shouted, as they aimed their weapons at Naruto. Only for the blonde to vanish in a burst of speed, reappearing behind the guards before. Swinging the chains still attached to his wrists, wrapping them around two guards' necks. Swinging the guards around, Naruto knocked down the remaining guards, before pulling the two being choked close and snapped their necks. Roaring again, Naruto grabbed the collar around his neck, and ripped it off. He then crashed through a wall, and began tearing apart any guards he saw, or that got in his way. All while he still had enough sense to break the chains of the other Faunus, who were shocked at what was happening, before quickly grabbing any weapons from the fallen guards, and began fighting back, or escaping while they could. Seeing this, Naruto soon made his own escape with him vanishing in a blur of speed, as he ran as far from the mine as possible. He didn't know how long he was running, only that when he finally stopped, Naruto saw he was now in a dark forest. What the hell was that? Naruto thought, panting in confusion and exhaustion, wondering what that red energy was that helped him escape. He didn't think it was this aura stuff he's heard about, as from what he's heard, you needed someone to unlock it. And as far as Naruto knew, his aura hasn't been unlocked. Whatever it was, I'm thankful I have it, thought Naruto, knowing without that strange energy, he likely would have been branded, and possibly even killed. Unfortunately, before Naruto could take a moment to rest, he tensed up when he heard a clicking sound. My Hero Academia asked, "You say run." Looking, Naruto gulped and stepped back when he saw a massive black spider, with white bone plating along its legs, back, and a bone mask on its face, with 6 glowing red-yellow eyes. Naruto knew this must be a creature of Grim, and from the size of it, it must be a powerful one. Shit, whoa, Naruto thought, jumping back when the spider Grim lunged at him. Use the chains. Naruto immediately turned around at the sudden voice, but didn't see anything, or anyone else. What the? Jump and flip, now. Acting on instinct, Naruto immediately jumped into the air, flipping over the Grim, that just barely missed biting him. Use the chains, while it's distracted. Deciding to just listen to the voice, Naruto swung the chains around his wrists, wrapping them around one of the spider's legs, pulling it off balance. Now jump up and drop kick it in the head. Nodding, Naruto jumped up and slammed his feet into the spider's head, dazing it. Now wrap the chains around its neck and kill it. Nodding again, Naruto was about to do just that. Unfortunately, the spider was able to regain its bearings before opening its mouth and shot a glob of webbing at Naruto's arm. This threw Naruto back, while his arm became pinned to a tree. Shit, Naruto thought, strew, GGLING to free his arm as the spider charged towards him. Don't panic, wait until it's close and then flip over, so it crashes into the tree. Hearing the voice's instructions, Naruto willed himself to calm down, while preparing for the right moment, as the spider grew closer. Do it now. Immediately, Naruto flipped up and over the spider, as it smashed through the tree, which had the effect of freeing Naruto's arm from the webbing, though it also resulted in Naruto landing on top of the spider and began riding it. Wrap one of the chains around its neck, to hold on, while wind the other one around your hand. And start attacking, until it goes down. Doing so, Naruto swung the chain under the spider's neck, while grabbing the other end, while he wrapped the second chain around his fist. Once done, Naruto began punching the spider in the head repeatedly, again and again, all while trying to hold, as the Grim crashed into trees and rocks, in an effort to throw him off. Eventually, though Naruto's attacks finally made the spider's legs give out, as it slid across the forest floor. This also resulting in Naruto being thrown off its back, rolling across the ground, where he stopped on the edge of a pit filled with black goo. Groaning, Naruto got up, and looked at the spider, seeing it wasn't getting up, but was still alive. Now, kill it, before it can attack again. Nodding, Naruto began approaching the spider slowly, to finish it off, still wary of it suddenly attacking again. And he was right, as the spider immediately jumped and tackled Naruto straight into the pit of goo, intent to take him down with it. Falling into the pit, Naruto gasped as the spider grabbed hold of him, before suddenly, they began being thrashed around by an unseen force. Naruto could only watch as the spider began dissolving into black goo, but rather than merge with surrounding goo, it attached itself to Naruto and started covering him in what looked like a suit. Panicking at what was going on, Naruto tried getting the suit off, but found he could hardly even move. The goo also began seeping into Naruto's wounds, merging with his blood, as it continued forming around him. Soon, Naruto was covered in a jet black suit, with a white spider symbol forming on the front and back, and white squares on the back of his hands. The suit then spread up Naruto's neck and head, covering his face. Before two large white, jagged lenses formed over his eyes. It didn't stop there as Naruto's body began growing and bulking up, while the suit's mask split open, revealing 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth and a long tongue. Meanwhile, outside the pit, the entire forest had suddenly fallen silent, with no animals or noise making a sound. Then, without warning, a clawed black hand shot out of the pit and grabbed onto the ledge, pulling itself out of the pit, revealing the being that Naruto and the grim spider had become. Once it had pulled itself out of the pit, the being threw its head back and roared, sending all animals scattering away from it. The being then took off running, acting on its basic grim instincts, and began searching for the highest source of negative emotions. With it finding the highest source, in a town close to the flying city of Atlas. Time skip 2 weeks. 2 weeks have passed since the incident at one of the dust mines, owned by the Schnee Dust Company. Eyewitnesses claim the incident started when the guards at the mine took a young Faunus boy, and attempted to brand him with the SDC logo, resulting in what NY of the escaped Faunus workers claimed was the boy acting like a grim, attacking all the workers, and yet sparing his fellow Faunus and, in fact, freeing them from their chains. It is also claimed that the boy was covered in a shroud of red aura, that burned anything it touched. When questioned by the accusation of mistreatment and abuse of the Faunus workers, Jacques, CEO of the Schnee Dust Company, had this to say. These horrid accusations are clearly nothing but lies, made up to slander the Schnee Dust Company's good name. I have personally seen to it that all my workers, both human and Faunus, are treated equally, with there having been no chains, or this so-called branding. The only shame is the loss of life for the workers, of what can only be an attack by those terrorists, the White Fang. Rest assured, I have ensured all workers have been pardoned of these false accusations of mistreatment, and those who made them shall be properly disciplined, before being returned to work. Meanwhile, within a bar in Atlas, a cloaked figure watched the news report that was being aired in all the kingdoms and menagerie, clenching their fists in anger, when Jacques Schnee appeared and gave all those bullshit lies, that any rational and morally sane person could see through. And knew that this would only sour relationships with the other kingdoms, especially menagerie. With the White Fang being called terrorists. Not that they were complaining, but it still pissed them off at hearing how those bastards are getting away with everything they did, while the Faunus were likely recaptured. And will be punished. And all just for wanting their freedom back. The cloaked person's anger rose to the point, the glass they were holding shattered in their hand, not that they cared as they stood up. Placing some lean on the counter for the drink, along with a tip for the broken glass, the stranger exited the bar. All right, if no one else will punish though. Say bastard for what they did, the stranger thought, entering an alley as their form began changing and growing. Then we will, said the stranger, as their voice became deeper and more sinister. Later, after the incident at the mine, and giving his response to it, Jacques knew he needed to do something to make sure the SDC didn't lose face in the public's eye. To this end, he hosted a public party in the SDC headquarters, welcoming anyone to attend, to create a more positive light for the company. Along with having all the workers from the incident show up, to show that despite what happened, they would remain tall and strong. It was also being broadcast live to the rest of the kingdoms, this way all of Remnant could see the SDC company was fair and kind. Though he also made sure there was security for the event, just in case anyone thought to crash it. Hundreds of people had attended the event, though most of them who knew what Jacques Schnee was really like, and it was all just a publicity stunt to make himself look better. Meanwhile, unknown to all the guests, they were being watched as a pair of eyes looked down at them from a nearby rooftop. The person narrowed their eyes, before they gained a wicked grin, showing off razor-sharp teeth, when they saw all the workers from the mine were gathered together, in their own little group. Perfect, the person thought, knowing that'll make it much easier than having to track them all down. The party continued on for a few more moments, with everyone either mingling with each other or enjoying the catering. Then without any warning, it happened. A loud bestial roar echoed throughout the area, freaking everyone out, when suddenly a large black blur smashed into the ground. The sight of a near 6-foot-tall, hulking black behemoth, with a white spider symbol on its chest and back, white squares on the back of its hands, that had sharp claws on the fingers, large jagged white eyes, and a mouth full of shark-like teeth. The sight of the creature made everyone scream in fear and panic. Grim. This caused everyone to begin running around in a panic to escape the grim, all the Atlesian knights and soldiers began opening fire on the grim. The being merely roared, before leaping into the air and landing on an Atlesian knight, tearing it apart, before shooting a web from their hand that attached to a soldier. The soldier was then pulled towards the being, and close-lined, as the being flipped over more shots, grabbing 2 more soldiers and tossing them into the distance. Tearing a light post out of the ground, the being used it as a bat and swung it at a group of knights, knocking the upper part of their bodies off. It then threw the post at the remaining soldiers, knocking them to the ground. The being then roared, before turning its attention back to the workers, who tried escaping only for the being to launch a web at them, tying them up. "You aren't going anywhere," said the being, shocking everyone at hearing a supposed grim speak. The being walked up to the cowering workers, before grabbing one, and lifting him into the air. "You aren't going anywhere, until you confess the truth of what happened in that mine." The being growled, "What are you talking about? We didn't do ah." The worker screamed, when the being roared in his face, with its jaws looking ready to bite down on his head. "Confess or suffer," said the being, slamming the worker onto the ground, getting another cry of pain. All right, it's true. The Faunus were chained up, we did beat them, and we did brand them." The man screamed, loudly for all to hear, while all the remaining guests gasped in shock at hearing this. "And what about the boy who helped the Faunus escape?" demanded the being. "We just found him out in the tundra and forced him to work in the mine. He went on a rampage, after we tried branding him," said the worker, while crying in fear, as trails of tears and snot ran down his face. Something that made the man look all the more pathetic, yet also amused the being. Back in the mine, they acted all high and mighty, because they were armed with weapons, while the Faunus were chained, giving them all the illusion of power. But once that illusion has been broken, like back in the mine, and now, they have shown what they really are. Nothing but pathetic pieces of sniveling meat, that the world is better off without. "And why did you force him into the mine?" the being said, slamming its foot on the man's chest. "Because we didn't think anyone would care about some stupid, lost animal," cried the man, with the being grinning, before turning to the guests. "There you have it, folks. The truth that Jacques wanted to keep buried. And now the whole world knows the truth," said the being, looking directly at a camera, as everything was still being broadcasted to the other kingdoms. "You'll let us go and now, rewrite?" the worker asked, fearfully, only to pale when the being grinned at him menacingly. The man didn't even have time to scream, before the being lifted him up, before biting down on his head, tearing it off, much to everyone's horror, as the guests either began running again, or started to puke at the sight. The being then turned to the other workers. The being then created 2 whips in its hands, before striking them across 2 workers' throats, slicing them open before, wrapping both whips around a 3rd worker's neck before having them tear through his neck. The 4th worker, the being once again bit his head off, before turning its attention to the last worker, who was cowering in utter fear. The being grabbed the man by his throat and walked over to a camera, before picking it up, while dropping the worker on the ground, and stepping on his head. To everyone in the 4 kingdoms, this is a message to all who would torture, kill, steal, and inflict any pain on the innocent. We are Venom, and as of this moment, none of you are safe. Venom said into the camera, before directing it to the last worker. Without hesitation, Venom lifted his foot and stomped it down onto the worker's head, crushing it into a bloody paste. He then turned the camera, back towards himself, before biting it in half. With that, Venom launched another web and swung away, knowing his message has been sent, and that now people will know of his existence. They will know the lethal protector is out there, and he's coming for you. Venom. The lethal protector. Hero or villain? This was the newest headline for news all across the Four Kingdoms, the day after Venom's appearance at the Schnee Dust Company's party. And the brutal execution of the SDC workers. With Venom's appearance having caused complete pandemonium throughout the city of Atlas, everyone fearful of becoming its next targets. With those connected to the SDC, and specifically aware of Jacques Schnee's treatment of his Faunus workers, being the most terrified. With most of them planning to cut ties with Jacques, in order to save their own skin. However, while nearly everyone could agree that Venom was a terrifying figure, they could also understand the reasoning for his actions. Leading many to be divided on whether Venom was a hero for exposing the SDC. And Jacques' true nature, or a villain, for his brutal killing of the workers. Though it wasn't just in Mantle and Atlas that people were talking about Venom, all across Remnant. There were those intrigued as to the appearance of this new figure. Mistral. On the edge of the continent of Anima, home to the kingdom of Mistral, the members of the Bronwyn tribe were watching a recording of Venom's appearance, and execution of the SDC workers. A few of the bandits grimaced, when Venom bit some of their heads off. Meanwhile, the leader of the tribe, Raven Bronwyn, sat in her tent, frowning as she watched the video, while everyone else was wondering where Venom came from, along with what exactly he, or it, was. Raven wondered if this some new type of Grim, that was created by Salem. Or even a result of Ozpin getting desperate enough to create something he couldn't control. It could also be something different, but Raven wasn't sure what exactly it was. Or if it was affiliated with anyone. Could this thing be a threat to us? Asked Vernal, a member of the tribe, and one that Raven trusted. The bandit queen glanced at her for a moment, before looking back at the video. Possibly, though Venom could also be a potential asset, if we play our cards right. For now, we'll watch and wait to see what else they do. Along with King advantage of everyone's eyes being on him. Raven said, while Vernal smirked hearing this. I'll let the others know we might be taking a trip to Solitas. Vernal said, before exiting the tent, while Raven nodded. Since going to a different kingdom would help things calm down in Anima for a while, and there'd be plenty of easy pickings in Solitas, for the time being. Watching the video, Raven couldn't keep the smirk off her face, when it changed to a live news feed, showing Jacques Schnee being questioned on the reveal of the treatment of his Faunus workers, though slaves seems more appropriate. Fun isn't something one considers, when looking at these recent events. Raven thought, her smirk widening, as she saw the panic on Jacques' face. But this does put a smile on my face. She may be a bandit and a killer, but even Raven had standards. Patch. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Can you believe it, sis? There's a real superhero out there, said 10-year-old Ruby Rose, with a large grin on her face, as she ran around her and Yang's room. Rewrite. A hero, Ruby, said 12-year-old Yang, giving her sister a strained smile, since she wouldn't exactly call Venom a hero. After what he did to those workers, Yang was just glad that she and their dad, Taiyang Xiaolong, made sure Ruby didn't hear or see anything of what Venom did. Though Ruby had still been able to hear Venom's message, leading her to seeing him as some sort of hero, protecting the innocent, both human and Faunus. Why aren't you excited? Now there's someone out there helping people, including Faunus. Isn't that good? Ruby asked, with Yang nodding reluctantly, as she did agree that Venom's attack was justified, after hearing what happened to those Faunus, but she didn't think he had to be so brutal. I guess, but we still don't really know anything about this Venom guy. For all we know, it could just be a trick. Yang said. Nope, you'll see that Venom is a hero, said Ruby seriously, or as serious as a 10-year-old can be. Right, Yang muttered as she exited their room and saw their dad standing just outside, with a worried look on his face. Taiyang also was rather worried about his youngest daughter looking up to Venom as a hero, not wanting Ruby to admire someone who kills so casually, and so brutally. But at the same time, he didn't want to terrify her by showing her exactly what Venom did, rather than just believing he beat up the workers. Dad, do you think we should tell Ruby what really happened? Yang asked, with Taiyang shaking his head, reluctantly. No, let her enjoy the idea of having a hero to look up to. She'll learn when she's older, I hope. Taiyang replied, while muttering the last part to himself. Maybe he could have Kiro talk to Ruby, and get her to not have such a high pedestal to put Venom on. His teammate always was better at getting the girls to listen to him. Vale. Hiro Bronwyn sneezed as he sat within a bar in Vale. Wiping his nose, Hiro sipped his drink, before glancing up at a television, showing Venom's attack. Like his sister, Hiro wondered if this was a new type of Grim created by Salem. Only to immediately dismiss the idea. Given if it was a Grim, then why would it attack Atlas and only kill a few people, along with being able to talk, which shouldn't be possible for a Grim. Unless it is a Grim, but someone's wearing it. Hiro thought, wondering if it was possible it was a Grim that could possess people, or if whoever was inside it was in control of themselves. Whatever Venom is, Hiro wasn't going to interfere in his business, unless Ozpin sent him to investigate. So, for now, Hiro will just be wary if he comes across Venom, but won't attack, not knowing just how powerful he is. Plus, on a more personal level, Hiro couldn't deny he took a dark joy in how Venom was screwing over an asshole, like Jacques. I'm going to enjoy watching you bury yourself. Hiro thought, smirking as he watched Jacques himself appear, and began making up excuses to defend himself, most of which just dug him an even deeper hole than the one he was already in. Beacon Academy. Ozpin sat in his office, looking at his scroll, looking over the videos and photos taken of Venom. The appearance alone, along with his brutal nature, pointed to Venom being a Grim. But unlike a Grim, Venom didn't kill anyone, besides the SDC workers, and then simply left. Do you think this is a new plan from Salem? Asked Glinda Goodwitch, from beside Ozpin, with the headmaster shaking his head. No, while this Venom does look like a Grim, I doubt he is connected to Salem. This is too rash and open for Salem to be involved. I honestly don't know who or what Venom is. Just that he's not someone to be trifled with. Ozpin said. What should we do? Goodwitch asked, believing someone like Venom couldn't be allowed to roam freely, and kill anyone who gets in his way. For now, nothing. We don't know where Venom is, who or what he is, or his motives. All we can do is watch, and wait, replied Ozpin, knowing there wasn't anything they could do at the moment. Though he did have one idea of who Venom could be, an idea that worried Ozpin greatly. What if Venom was sent by the Brother Gods, showing that Ozpin was out of time in trying to unite Remnant? And they've sent Venom, but was he sent to accomplish what Ozpin has failed to do, or is Venom the one who will be their end? I hope that I'm wrong, otherwise, this will be my final life. Ozpin thought. Land of Darkness. Meanwhile, within the Land of Darkness, sat Evernight Castle, the base of Salem and her inner circle, consisting of Arthur Watts, Tyrion Callows, and Hazel Reynard. Even they had learned of Venom's attack, and were both surprised and intrigued by him. With Tyrion also laughing madly at how Venom murdered the SDC workers. Wahahahahahaha. I like his style. Nothing but blood, death, and chaos. Tyrion laughed, grinning madly as he watched Venom bite the workers' heads off. Yes, my lady, if you don't mind my asking, is this a new Grim you have created? Arthur asked, looking at Salem, who watched the image of Venom with intrigue. No, this is not one of my creations, Arthur. Though it's most interesting, I can feel that this Venom is Grim-like. But he's not a Grim, himself. He's something else, Salem commented, leaning to the side, both confused and interested in finding out what Venom was. Was he like her, having fallen in a pool of Grim and become this creature? If so, how did the person survive? Salem was immortal and couldn't die, so how could this person have survived? Should we take him out? Hazel asked with a frown, not liking Venom's casual slaughter, and the loss of life. No, for now, let us wait and see what else Venom does. But if we get the chance, we will capture Venom, and see what he is. Who knows, perhaps he could prove to be a possible recruit. And perhaps, something more, said Salem, while thinking the last part, with a smirk. If this Venom was like her, and survived falling into a pool of Grim, then he would be so much more than a disposal pawn or killer. After all, once she finally kills Ozma, permanently, along with his allies. She will collect the 4 relics and absorb the power of the maidens, allowing her to rule over all of Remnant as queen. And every queen needs a king, Salem thought, while looking at the image of Venom. Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Salem's newest protege, Pawn, Cinderfall, watched Venom's attack, intrigued by the power displayed. That power, with it and the power of the maidens, I'd be unstoppable. Cinder thought with a glint in her eyes, wanting the power Venom had for herself, along with the maiden's power, and she'll get it. Unknown location. On an uninhabited island, off the coast of the continent of Sanus. There resided a massive complex, belonging to the now-defunct Merlot Industries, and home to the believed-to-be deceased Drive. Merlot. Yes, yes, yes. This is exactly as I have said. The key to the next stage of evolution in Remnant. Merlot thought, grinning wickedly as he looked over various images of Venom's attack. Merlot was no fool, he knew exactly what Venom was. A hybrid between a human and a Grimm. Taking the raw strength and power of a Grimm, with a human mind in control of it, creating the perfect Grimm. Whereas the rest were flawed and incomplete. I must capture this Venom and study it. With it, the knowledge I gain from it, I will finally be able to complete my research and create the perfect hybrid. Muttered Merlot, looking intently at Venom's image, swearing he will find this creature and capture it, to finally complete his research. Menagerie. See Gira, this is proof enough for you. If the Faunus wish to be seen as equal, we need to show the humans we won't remain passive, and will fight back. Sienna Khan argued with the high leader of the White Fang, Gira Belladonna. After Venom's attack, and forcing the SDC workers to confess their treatment of the Faunus workers, the entire White Fang was in an uproar. Even more so than when Jacques called them terrorists, after the mine incident. Though this did result in their numbers growing, with many Faunus angered at the treatment of their fellow Faunus, and wanted to do something about it. Even Gira, who normally preferred a more peaceful path to equality, wanted to rip Jacques apart. The only thing stopping him was that it wouldn't solve anything, and would only lead to more violence. Besides, Venom's actions will eventually lead to Jacques' downfall. Though many Faunus weren't satisfied with that, and wanted Jacques' head. Currently, Gira was having a meeting with several of the high-ranked members of the White Fang, to discuss what to do. And what would you have us do, Sienna? March up to Atlas and attack the SDC, that would only make them martyrs, especially those that had nothing to do with this. No, I won't have everything we worked for be undone. What we'll do, is send a small team to Mantle, to find the Faunus there, and bring them somewhere safe. Gira said, wanting to get his fellow Faunus out of Mantle and Atlas. Not wanting to risk them being captured and forced to work in dust mines, as well. And who would you send? Sienna questioned, annoyed that he wasn't willing to take a more direct action. I'll go, someone said. Looking, Gira saw the one who spoke was Adam Taurus, making him frown. Adam, are you sure? Gira asked, knowing Adam's history in Atlas, especially with the SDC, wasn't the most positive. Yes, if it means making sure no Faunus suffer under someone like Jacques, I'll do it. Besides, me and anyone that decides to comes with, can help set up a place where the Faunus we gather can stay to rest and eat, before moving them out of Solitas. Adam replied, with Gira nodding, as that would be good, giving the Faunus a place to stay, while they found places where they could go. Besides Menagerie, your thoughts, Sienna? Gira asked, looking at the tiger Faunus, as despite their differences, Gira knew she truly did care for the Faunus, and wanted to make things better for them, even if her methods were too violent for his taste. He was even considering naming her his successor as High Leader of the White Fang, since he'll be stepping down soon. To be Chieftain of Menagerie, full-time. Will you be able to control yourself? Asked Sienna, as she looked at Adam, knowing he had a temper, when it came to the SDC. As long as I keep focused on my goal, yes. Adam answered. Very well, Adam, you and 10 others will go to Mantle to set up somewhere for Faunus to stay and work, as well. Gira said, with Adam nodding, while giving a short bow. Thank you, High Leader. I'll find those that wish to join me, and set off. Said Adam, before leaving the meeting. Though what none of them saw, was Adam's smirk, or his eyes glowing white as he left. What they also didn't notice was how Adam didn't say what his exact goal was. I hope you're ready, Schnee. Because your suffering has only just begun. Adam thought, swearing he'll make Jacques Schnee pay for what he's done. Chieftain's home. Meanwhile, within the chieftain's home, Gira's wife and daughter, Callie and Blake, along with Blake's friend and fellow White Fang member, Elia, watched Venom's attack. It shocked and angered them at what their fellow Faunus were put through. Elia more so, given how her parents had been caught in a mining accident in Mantle. Though it also shocked and scared the two children at how brutal Venom was, especially biting some of the workers' heads off. But they still understood his reasons, and it only did them more determined to go out and do what they can to make things better for their fellow Faunus. Haven Academy. Leonardo Lionheart, headmaster of Haven Academy, couldn't deny the fear and panic he felt as he watched the video of Venom's attack. This is a grim, it has to be. I have to speak with Ozpin about this. Lionheart thought, knowing he had to contact Ozpin, terrified of this grim setting its eyes on him. Unless this is Salem's newest grim, and she's sending it after anyone siding with Ozpin. Thought Lionheart, even more terrified at this grim being under Salem's direct control. And this attack was merely a test of its power, with any further attacks being targeted to anyone siding with Ozpin, including him. Yo, you can't fight something like this, Lionheart muttered, paling as he watched Venom crush the worker's head beneath his foot. If this grim really was under Salem's control, then Lionheart knew siding with Ozpin would only mean his inevitable death. Salem alone was an impossible threat to defeat, but if she has this Venom, with her, then it really was a hopeless fight. Mistral. Down in the city of Mistral, Sun Wukong and his friend Neptune Vasilias watched in a mix of fear and amazement at Venom's appearance and attack. Fear given how terrifying and vicious he was, but also amazed at his strength and skill. Man, he's got some sweet moves, Sun said, watching Venom take out the Atlesian soldiers and knights. Yeah, we'd have to train really hard, if we want to be that good, said Neptune, before the two grinned at each other, hoping they'll be able to become that strong when they're older. Shade Academy. Within Shade Academy in Vacuo, the headmaster Theodore frowned as he watched the video of Venom's attack. He was sure Ozpin, and possibly Salem, have already seen it as well, and are likely wondering who, or what, Venom is. Theodore was also wondering that as well, along with wondering if there are more like Venom. If just one could do this, what could 2, 3, or a dozen be capable of? I'll have to see about changing the curriculum, and increasing the training for my students, Theodore thought, knowing with Venom's appearance, it will open up the doors for more like him, and he'll make sure his hunters will be ready for them. Argus. 12-year-old Pyrrha. Nikos could only watch the video of Venom killing the SDC workers in pity and sadness. Both for the faunus that suffered in dust mines, and even for the workers that took enjoyment in the suffering of others, given how they died. Unlike most kids her age, Pyrrha wasn't as horrified at the idea of killing, having learned that there are those that simply are beyond redemption. But she still believes that there could have been a less violent and brutal way of dealing with the workers, though accepts that she also won't shed any tears over their deaths. Hopefully, Venom will change his ways, Pyrrha thought, believing that Venom could become a hero that can do some good in the world, but hopes he'll do so by not killing everyone he comes across. Suddenly, Pyrrha turned around when her door was opened, and she smiled when she saw her father standing there. "What's that you're watching, Pyrrha?" he asked, with Pyrrha showing him the video of Venom's attack, making him frown. Not sure if she should be seeing something like that at her age. "Do you think he was right, killing those workers like he did, even after they already confessed their crimes?" Pyrrha asked, as her father sat down beside her, while putting a hand on her shoulder. "Do I believe they deserve to die? Yes, after the crimes they committed, taking enjoyment in hurting and torturing faunus, they deserved it. But did they deserve to die like that? I don't believe so. However, I also believe such an act was necessary to show the people in the world, who are like those workers, that there is someone out there who won't hesitate to inflict such pain on them. Sometimes, Pyrrha, drastic actions must be taken to ensure you get results," he explained, with Pyrrha frowning, but nodded in understanding. "Do you think Venom will change his ways, to be better?" asked Pyrrha. Perhaps, anyone can change in the future, he replied. Pyrrha smiled at that, before looking back the video. Ark household. 13-year-old Jean Ark had been horrified when she first watched Venom kill the SDC workers. Though she could still understand the reasons behind it, along with feeling bad for how the Faunus workers suffered, she still felt that it was too extreme, and that there could have been an easier way to solve it. Though even so, Jean still watched the video of the attack again, while thinking of all the Faunus that suffered in the dust mines, along with all those that suffered in the kingdoms. It made Jean swear that one day, she'll become a huntress so she can help people. To show that there will be someone who will help humans, Faunus, and anyone else, in need of help. Vale. In another part of Vale, 12-year-old Lyren and 12-year-old Nora Valkyrie, his best friend, watched in fear, amazement, and respect, as Venom attacked the Schnee party. And hearing the reason why, after forcing the workers to confess their treatment of the Faunus in the dust mines. Remembering the attack on their village, Ren couldn't help but feel respect for Venom, that there's finally being a protector, who is willing to do what's necessary to get justice for people. It made Ren more determined than ever to become a huntsman, and make sure what happened with Kuroyuri doesn't happen anywhere else. Ren, we should get costumes to fight crime, Nora said excitedly, wanting to dress up and fight crime, now. We're not doing that, Nora, stated Ren, given they weren't only kids, but also training to be a huntsman and huntress. Warehouse. Roman Torchwick whistled in amazement, as he and his right hand, Neo, watched Venom's attack. Gotta say, whoever this guy is, or what he is, they certainly know how to make an impression. Torchwick commented, with Neo nodding agreement. Along with knowing how to really screw someone over. Neo said with her sign. Indeed they do. What I wouldn't give to see those Schnee's faces, right now, said Torchwick smirking, while knowing with the chaos Venom has caused, it'll be the perfect time for them to take advantage of all eyes being on him. Mantle. Robin Hill and her happy huntresses, as the people have started calling them, looked at their scrolls, watching as Venom forced the SDC workers to confess their mistreatment of the Faunus, before executing them. Robin, what should we do, if Venom comes here? Asked Fiona Time, the sole Faunus in the group, while looking at Robin, worried of Venom coming to Mantle, and targeting the people here. Then we'll put the freak down, before he can touch the citizens of Mantle. Joanna Greenleaf answered, not afraid to face Venom, if it meant protecting Mantle. The only ones who'd be put in the ground would be us, if we tried engaging Venom, said Robin, watching how Venom fought, and saw how he seemed to react to attacks that he normally wouldn't see. Possibly a semblance, warning him of danger, or something else. Not to mention his strength, and those webs he can create. So, we'd just sit back and let him kill people, May Marigold said, angry at the idea of doing nothing, if Venom attacked Mantle. That's not what I said. Just that attacking him would end in our deaths. If Venom does come here and we do encounter him, it will be under peaceful terms, rather than attacking. But only if we manage to find him. And if he does come to Mantle. Besides, from his message, I'm pretty sure anyone he targets has it coming. Robin said, while pocketing her scroll. While Venom might be an unknown, it seems like he's not a complete monster, just a monster that other monsters should fear. Atlas Academy. Just what are you? Wondered James Ironwood, headmaster of Atlas Academy and general of the Atlesian military, as he examined the video footage of Venom's attack, with a frown. On a personal level, Ironwood could agree with Venom's attack against Jacques, and finally exposing some of the corrupt nature of the SDC. With it also giving him a legal excuse to begin investigating Jacques, and hopefully put him away, given Ironwood couldn't stand Jacques Schnee, or his selfish greed. But as a military leader, Ironwood also knew he needed to see Venom as a potential threat to Atlas, especially with how easily he snuck into Atlas, without an alarm going off. And while his message showed he was targeting criminals, or anyone who hurts the innocent, Ironwood couldn't take the chance, or risk of someone taking the law into their own hands, in Atlas. Especially if Venom decides to branch out in who he targets. I'll have my men be on the lookout for Venom, with orders to detain and capture. Ironwood thought, wanting to find out who, or what, Venom was along, with ensuring the panic he caused can be ended. Before it ends up drawing in the grim Schnee manner. Willow Schnee sipped her wine, as she sat in the garden, the only location she really liked to be anymore, in her home. She, like the rest of Remnant, had been shocked at Venom's appearance, but her shock hadn't lasted. She knew it was likely only a matter of time before her husband's actions finally came back to haunt him. The only surprise was the form it took. When the initial shock wore off, though, Willow went back to being uncaring, as she has been for the past 3 years, since Weiss's 10th birthday. When Jacques finally revealed he only married her for her family name, she always suspected that was the reason, but for Jacques to confirm it, it shattered what little hope she had left for a happy life. So, Willow turned to alcoholism to cope with being married to a cold and uncaring man. Willow lost hope of a better life, or trying to stop Jacques' actions with her father's company, turning a completely blind and indifferent eye to it all. It's even led her to neglecting her own children, with Winter having already left to join the Atlesian military. Though it didn't mean she didn't care about her children, she did, given the hidden cameras she had set up in every room. Out of fear and paranoia of Jacques one day doing something to her, or her children. Now with Venom's appearance, Willow felt foolish for feeling a spark of hope at Jacques finally being torn down. But she did, and hoped Jacques got what he deserved. Mother. Blinking, Willow looked, and saw her 13-year-old daughter, Weiss, standing by the door. Yes, Weiss, Willow said, turning back to look forward. Is Venom going to come after us? Weiss asked, terrified at the thought of Venom coming after her, of him crashing into her room and biting her head off, ripping her throat open, or even just tearing her in half. After seeing what Venom did to the workers, Weiss had been horrified at the gruesome and painful deaths. But she also felt pity, as while she may be angry at the White Fang for the attacks against her family and the SDC, Weiss knew after the confessions from the workers. Her father has had this coming for years. But while Weiss could understand Venom's actions, he was still attacking her family's company, and tarnishing her family's legacy even more than her father has. On one hand, she wanted to accept Venom's attack was warranted, but on the other, it was her family he was attacking. Add in her building fear of Venom coming after her, as well. Weiss simply wanted some reassurance that she was safe, even if it came from her increasingly uncaring mother. No, Weiss, I doubt Venom will come after you, said Willow, with Weiss nodding slowly, before turning to go back inside, but stopped and looked at her mother. Venom, he's going to go after father, won't he? Weiss asked, with Willow glancing at her daughter. Possibly, yes, Willow replied, only to be surprised when she saw Weiss's eyes harden. Good, said Weiss, before going inside to resume her training. Time skipped 2 days. Jacques grit his teeth in anger, as he sat in the most recent board of directors meeting, having lost track of how many he's had to attend, since that damn Venom showed up. Ever since that freak showed up, and attacked the party he held, everything has been going downhill. Not only were all the mines under the SDC being investigated for mistreatment of the animals, who should be grateful he even found a use for them, but shareholders were also starting to pull out of funding the SDC, along with various clients looking elsewhere to purchase dust. The worst, though, had to be that his position as CEO was in jeopardy. And Jacques refused to lose control of the company, after everything he went through to gain control. To make matters worse, they're now thinking of offering the position to either Winter, given her ties to the Atlesian military, or having his father-in-law, Nicholas Schnee, come back to take over. We've contacted both Winter and Nicholas, asking them to take up position as CEO. Though Winter has refused, wanting to focus on her military career, said one of the board members. And what about Willow, Weiss, or Whitley? They are just as capable to take over the company, in my stead. Jacques said, knowing if it was any of those three, then he'd be able to still run the company through them. Only for the idea to shut down, when the board members shook their heads. No, Weiss is far too young to take over, with Whitley being even younger than Weiss. While Willow is not suited to run the company, in her current state. Besides, Nicholas has already agreed to return on 2 conditions, said another member. And what conditions are those? Jacques demanded, hoping he could use them to his advantage, and keep his position. The first, is that he'll be CEO, only until his daughter cleans up her act, and he deems her ready to take over. And the second, is that you are out of the company, Jacques, permanently," said the second board member. "What?" shouted Jacques, standing up in anger at what he just heard. Given what he's heard, Nicholas realizes he made a mistake in naming you as his successor, and now wants you out of the SDC. Said another member. "A mistake!" Exclamation mark. "I'm the one WHO built this company to what it is. You can't just kick me out," Jacques shouted, glaring at the board, with the members not looking the least bit intimidated by his anger. Knowing it was already unanimously decided to kick Jacques out. Given the corrupt members that knew of Jacques' illegal activities and mistreatment of Faunus workers were hoping to not be dragged down with him, or worse, have Venom come after them next. "It's already decided. You're out, Jacques," said the first member. Angered further by this, Jacques stormed out in a rage. Before pulling out his scroll, contacting one of the few scientists he had, that was still loyal to him. All while swearing that he'll make those upstart windbags pay for thinking they can kick him out of his company. "And then you're next, Venom," Jacques thought, swearing they'll all pay. Later SDC laboratory. "Mr. Schnee, please. The performance enhancers aren't ready. The data just doesn't justify this test," said a scientist, watching as Jacques grabbed a glass tube filled with a clear white liquid, with the label CX-0009 on the tube. Jacques ignored the scientist, as he inserted the tube in a machine, before typing on a computer, getting ready for the experiment. This was one of the SDC's private experiments, a super soldier serum, designed to enhance the subject's physical abilities to that of a professional huntsman and beyond even that. Having taken inspiration from the serum used on Captain Arcadia, before his disappearance at the end of the Great War. It was created in the hopes of make it so anyone could fight the Grimm, eventually rendering hunters obsolete. Of course, the serum wasn't yet completed, still being in the prototype stages. They couldn't even use the serum that was used on Captain Arcadia as a reference, since all of the research on it was destroyed, while those who worked on it were killed, when an enemy SPY tried to prevent the experiment from happening. But Jacques was desperate, since the serum wouldn't only earn him recognition, and protect his position as CEO, but also allow him to take care of Venom himself. "Now, I'm telling you for the last time, we can't do this," the scientist said, knowing if Jacques used the serum on himself, there's a chance that he'll either die, or go insane, like the previous test subjects have. "Don't be a coward. Risks are part of laboratory science," Jacques retorted, going over to another console, causing a metal tray to slide out of a large glass chamber. "Let me reschedule, with a proper medical staff, and a volunteer. Just give me 2 weeks. The scientist pleaded. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'll no longer be the CEO, and the SDC will be dead without me. Now I'm doing things myself, get me the prochlorperazine," Jacques said, taking off his jacket, clip-on tie, and shirt. "For what?" asked the scientist, while getting the item. "It begins catalyzation, when the vapor hits the bloodstream," said Jacques, taking the prochlorperazine, looking at the bottle, imagining the revenge he'll take with his new abilities. Drinking the liquid, Jacques threw the bottle on the ground, before getting on the metal tray, flinching slightly when the metal restraints were locked around his body. The scientist went over to the console, causing the tray to slide into the chamber, and raise itself up, with Jacques nodding at him to begin the experiment. Reluctantly, the scientist started the procedure, causing the serum to drain from the tube and enter the chamber in a white vapor form. Jacques inhaled the vapor, soon being covered in it, while the scientist looked at several monitors, showing his vitals. Getting worried, when his heart skyrocketed. "Mr. Schnee," the scientist said, gasping when the vapor cleared, showing Jacques was seizing in his restraints. "Mr. Schnee," shouted the scientist, running over and began draining the chamber of the vapor, panicking when he saw Jacques' eyes had rolled into the back of his head. "Oh my God," muttered the scientist, when Jacques suddenly went completely still, with the heart monitor flatlining. "Oh my God, Mr. Schnee," the scientist said, opening the chamber and running inside. "Mr. Schnee," said the scientist, opening the restraints, and began doing chest compressions, hoping he could revive him. Looking, the scientist was relieved, when he saw the heart monitor showing a pulse again. Though unseen to him, Jacques' eyes snapped open. Turning back to the Jacques, the scientist gasped, when Jacques wrapped his hand around his throat, with a vicious snarl on his face. Back to formula, Jacques growled, before throwing the scientist straight through the glass chamber, and into a metal rack. Jumping onto the edge, Jacques hissed with a wicked grin on his face, before jumping forward, ready to make everyone who crossed him suffer. So, what did you think? Good. Yep, a lot of people are divided on whether Venom is a hero, a villain, or something else entirely. Along with a few hints at what's to come and characters that will appear later on. With it all building up to Jacques Schnee in a very familiar scene and will soon make his own debut. Now then, we also have an omake for the elemental nation's side of things in regards to Naruto's death. Omake. Shattered prophecy. Nearly 3 months have passed since Naruto's death during the retrieval mission, with the revelation having a great impact on all those who knew the whiskered blonde. Within Konoha, the ones who took it the hardest were Tsunade, Kakashi, and the rookies. With Shikamaru taking it the hardest, since he had been the team leader, believing had he gotten more members, this wouldn't have happened. Iruka had been saddened to learn of his former student's death, but made sure to comfort Konohamaru and his friends, with Konohamaru CTing like he had when his grandfather died, and isolated himself. The Ichiraku family had also been depressed at their favorite customer's death. Even worse was how the villagers had even started badmouthing Naruto. This led to them to pack their stand and move to the land of waves, remembering how Naruto talked about it, from his mission, and the people there, knowing the citizens of Wave would care about Naruto. For everything he did. Training Ground 7. Smash. Again. Screamed a panting Sakura, as she smashed yet another boulder thrown at her by Tsunade, with the mentioned Sanin, her apprentice assistant Shizune, and her sensei, Kakashi, standing by her side. All 3 of them helping the Pinkett train. It all started after learning of Naruto's death, with Sakura blaming herself for being literally worthless enough, to not being able to help either of her teammates in any way, and now one of them had died, while the other was in Orochimaru's grasp. It was at that point in her lowest, that she had enough of being so weak, thus she went to her sensei, as well as Tsunade, and pleaded to them to train her, so she can go beyond her limits, all to be able to redeem herself. And honor Naruto's memory by stopping Sasuke, before it was too late, and bring down both Orochimaru and the Akatsuki. While initially surprised, they quickly agreed as well, wanting to be a BLE to make up for their mistakes in how they couldn't help Naruto enough, and thus they all were training. Hyuga clan compound, training room. Haya. Hinata snapped back, as she threw herself fiercely against Neji and Hanabi, whom were being pushed back, despite being more skilled than the formerly shy girl. All thanks to her renewed determination, after recovering from Naruto's death. It truly hurt her, even now. But she knew that her crush wouldn't want her, nor anyone else to sit down and drown in despair, while doing nothing. Like she had done for so long, and instead she decided to honor his memory by accomplishing their dreams together, with her not only becoming a strong yet kind head of her clan, but also the next Hokage, all to change her family's ways. Meanwhile, Hyuga and the elders were watching seriously, yet there was a hint of surprise and pride in their stares, as they saw just how much Hinata was improving, alongside her sister and cousin. Showing that, indeed, the next generation of the Hyuga would lead the clan to greater heights than before. Root HQ, beneath Konoha. Lord Danzo, we have received word that the bounties of Sasuke Uchiha, Kabuto Yakushi and Orochimaru have been upgraded, with the new rewards for them, especially if their heads are brought. Though Tsunade is unfortunately insistent that the Uchiha is to be brought back alive, as to honor the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's memory, said one of the Root Anbu, kneeling down before the shadow of Konoha, who nodded stiffly. Good, though Tsunade's personal feelings are keeping her from putting a kill on site order. We can still use this to our advantage. Now go back to your post Taka, and tell the others to increase the training of all members, to prepare for the upcoming war. Danzo ordered, with his recruit agreeing, before retiring and leaving him to think about the future events, and how the loss of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki could lead to a possible Fourth Shinobi World War. Especially once the other villages got word about it, which is why they had to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Suna. In Sunagakur, the recently instated Godime Cage, Gaara Set down the newest edition of the bingo book, now listing Sasuke Uchiha with a kill on-site order. Glaring at the image of the Uchiha, Gaara soon turned away and looked out, over his village. Naruto Uzumaki, I'm sorry I wasn't able to save you, like you saved me. But I swear, I will honor your memory, and become a Kage worthy of your dream. Gaara mentally swore, wanting to honor his first friend's memory. Land of Sound. Jiraiya shouted as he slammed a Rasengan into another Oto ninja's head, killing them, before grabbing another by their neck. Where's Orochimaru? Jiraiya demanded, slamming them against the wall. With a dark glare. Ever since he learned about Naruto's death, Jiraiya had been hunting down every single one of Orochimaru's subordinates and bases, not stopping until he got his hands on that snake. Letting out all the negative emotions he usually keeps buried, wanting to avenge his godson's death, along with being filled with self-loathing at once again. Letting another person he cares about die. Now he's not going to stop until he finds Orochimaru, and do what he should have done years ago, and finally put the snake in the ground. A Megakure. Meanwhile, within a Megakure, a meeting was being held in one of the Akatsuki's bases about the death of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Itachi, what do you have to say for yourself? Pain demanded, glaring at the Uchiha, holding him responsible. Given it was his brother that killed the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and potentially ruined their plans. I have nothing to say, Pain-sama. I did not think Sasuke would actually kill Naruto, said Itachi. And yet he has, putting our plans in jeopardy with the Kyuubi gone. It's for this reason, Itachi, you are now responsible for finishing what you started and end the Uchiha clan. Because if you don't, I will have Kakuzu and Hidan hunt him down, and collect the bounties on your brother's head from Konoha and Suna. Pain said, with Itachi lowering his head, filled with shame. Blaming himself for this, for having pushed Sasuke too far in his goal to kill him. Now either Itachi had to kill his little brother, or have him be hunted and slaughtered by Hidan and Kakuzu. Very well, said Itachi. Good, all of you are dismissed, until further notice. Pain ordered, as all the members, besides Konan, Zetsu, and Pain himself, vanished. Once all the members had left, Madara stepped out of the shadows. Well, this is a fine mess, isn't it? Madara stated, annoyed with this development, but knew he could still salvage the Moon's Eye plan, even with the Uzumaki boy's death. What can we do? Without the Kyuubi, the ceiling cannot be completed, said Pain. We don't need the Kyuubi, just its chakra, which we can get by reviving the Gold and Silver brothers. Along with the rumors of heard of a boy in the Fire Temple, possessing a fragment of the Fox's chakra, as well. While not perfect, it's the best we can do at the moment. Also, I would like you to call off the hit you have on Sasuke, since I have plans for the boy, said Madara, knowing those three should have enough of the Kyuubi's chakra to be a good substitute. Very well, but may I ask why Sasuke should be left alive? Pain asked, not liking how he was essentially forced to spare the boy, after having just ordered his death. Let's just say, with the right push, the boy can become a worthy successor, as the second coming of Madara Uchiha. Madara said, knowing that with his potential, Sasuke will be invaluable to the Eye of the Moon plan, when the time comes to replace Itachi. Konan, make sure that there's an anonymous increase on the bounties for the heads of Orochimaru, Kabuto and Sasuke, as their actions have dealt us too much of a blow to simply pass by. Even if Madara wants to say otherwise. Pain ordered, the moment Madara was gone, and they couldn't detect either his or Zetsu's presences, with the blue-haired woman nodding at the order. Very well, Nagato. In fact, I'll even see if Sasori and Deidara are interested in tying up those loose ends, she suggested, knowing that those two members had quite the grudge with Orochimaru, as well as his accomplices to a certain extent, and would be more than willing to go and deal with them, if given enough incentive. Very good, Konan. Just make sure that no one else, aside from those two, learn of this, warned Nagato, as they got ready to start fixing the mistakes around them. With Orochimaru. Meanwhile, Orochimaru sat within Otogakure, panicking over what has happened. Not thinking the Kyuubi brat's death would lead to this. Not only was his bounty nearly tripled from Konoha, leading to more people hunting him down, now he had to deal with an enraged Jiraiya coming after him as well. Something the snake Sannin was secretly terrified of. Knowing for Jiraiya to be truly mad, he wouldn't stop until he, Orochimaru, was really dead. Even worse, the Akatsuki would likely be after him as well. While Orochimaru was working on making sure no one could find him, while Kabuto was having his own thoughts of cutting his losses. Not wanting to be dragged down with the Sannin. When he's inevitably found, either by Konoha or the Akatsuki. All the while Sasuke has merely kept to himself, and trained for when he'll finally confront Itachi. Wanting to make sure he was strong enough to kill his brother, and so Naruto's death wouldn't be in vain. Naruto sighed as he laid down on his bedroll in an abandoned building, with his appearance obscured by shadows. In the less populated area of the city of Mantle. This is where he's been staying, since arriving in Mantle, and after crashing the Schnee party and making his debut as Venom. The latter of which happened nearly a week ago, making it also nearly 3 weeks since this happened. Naruto thought, looking at his arm as it was covered in his symbiote. Flashback. Where are we? Naruto looked around in confusion, wondering where he is and why he's referring himself as we, before finding himself hanging upside from a building. Though his eyes widened, when he caught sight of his reflection in the windows. Only it wasn't him, it was some black humanoid creature, with a white spider symbol on its chest. Looking up, or down, Naruto saw he was hanging from a web. With his hands holding the web and his feet pressed against each other. Moving himself right side up, Naruto let go of the web, and was surprised, when he instinctively stuck to the windows. What is this? Naruto said, looking at his reflection in shock and fear, as the creature's mouth moved to mimic his words, showing it was indeed him. Is this, that Grim that attacked us? We can still feel our body. This thing, it's a suit. Naruto thought, while looking at his arm, as his shock and fear began fading. Wow, this feels good, said Naruto, as he began feeling the power that the suit was giving him. Everything around him seemed brighter, more focused, he felt like he could lift a building, or knock one down. Laughing to himself, Naruto removed his hands from the window, and saw he was still sticking to the window. Slowly, Naruto stood up straight on the side of the building, before his body tensed up. Then, without warning, Naruto front flipped on the window, first on his hands. Then landing on his feet, before kicking off the building. Yeah, Naruto shouted, as he flipped through the air, before turning around and once again instinctually shot a web out from his hand. And swung it through the air. When Naruto reached the height of his swing, he released the web and flew high up, landing on top of a building, sticking to one of the lights at the top. With the blonde taking in the view, as he realized he was in Mantle. Leaning against the light, Naruto looked at his suit, with an amazed smile. This is something else, Naruto said, his earlier fear now completely gone, replaced by the amazement at the power he gained from the suit. End flashback. Naruto was pulled from his musing, when he heard noise from outside the building. Peeking out the window, Naruto frowned, when he saw a construction team heading towards the building he's staying at. Guess it's time to find a new place, Naruto thought, while going over and began packing away what little he had. In a duffel bag, once he had everything, Naruto immediately vanished in a cloud of blue smoke, with a distinct BAMF* sound. Naruto then reappeared on top of a skyscraper, overlooking Mantle. Well, at least as far as semblances go, I got one that complements my other abilities. Naruto thought, glad he had a semblance that he could use in conjunction with his spider powers. He had unlocked his semblance after falling into the Grim Pit, and accidentally discovered it, after regaining control of his mind and body. Naruto having discovered that he could teleport anywhere he's been to. Anywhere in his line of sight, or anywhere he could think of. Of course, this was only after a lot of trial and error, some of which would have ended rather painfully, if not for his suit. Now, to find a new place, Naruto thought, as his suit once again covered his body. Though this time, it wasn't the bulky and monstrous version he was in, when he attacked the Schnee party. Now it was a more form-fitting suit, with black and white shoes, bagging black pants with white lining, and a white belt. While having a skin-tight long-sleeved black shirt, with the white spider symbol placed on his lower abdomen, with the legs reaching behind his back, to the symbol there, and spreading up his chest and down his arms. There are white squares on the back of his hands. White fingers with black web designs, a mask with the same jagged white lenses, and a black hood with a white interior and web design. Naruto figured that it'd be good to have a smaller form, while wearing the suit, rather than always being the monstrous form. So, he created this version, which would help him get around faster, and be harder to hit. With that, Naruto jumped off the building, and shot out a web, as he began swinging through Mantle, looking for a new place he could stay in. One that'd hopefully be more long-term, at least until he finally deals with Jacques and the other corrupt members of the SDC. After some time, Naruto soon found an empty warehouse, checking inside and around, to make sure it was really empty, and he didn't have to worry of anyone finding him. When he was sure it was empty, and no one would come snooping around, Naruto entered through a hatch on the roof, dropping his bag on an elevated platform. Once he got everything set up, Naruto sat down and closed his eyes. Mindscape. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself in his mindscape, which was no longer a sewer, thankfully. Now it had the appearance of a giant cave, with equally large spider webs around it. Naruto saw he had appeared right in front of Kurama's prison, with the fox laying down inside it. While off to the side, he could see Venom, looking more like a person wearing a regular black and white costume, sticking to the wall, looking at him when he appeared. Venom's appearance was due to the fact that Naruto's fusion with the Spider Grim wasn't perfect or complete. It was why Naruto referred to himself as we rather than I when he's Venom, since it's technically two beings in control. Thankfully, he's learned to control it in his human form, so he doesn't get any looks at referring to himself, plurally. How are you feeling? Naruto asked, while looking at Venom, as it crawled up the wall, before jumping off and landing on the tip of a stalagmite. Before its mask receded, revealing a face identical to Naruto's, except with spiky black hair, pale skin, as well as black and red eyes. We are fine, for now. We still feel our strength fading away, slowly, with each day. It will not be long, until we vanish completely, once the merge is complete, said Venom, not looking that worried that it will eventually vanish completely. With Naruto nodding, knowing what it meant. The three of them had speculated that the fusion of Naruto and the symbiote would eventually complete itself, in time. With Venom having accepted this inevitability, as it still possessed the memories from when it was still the Grim Spider, and how long it's been alive. Plus, it wouldn't deny that it felt nice to feel something outside of nothing but anger and a desire for destruction. Venom will enjoy the time it has left, and assist its host. Naruto also would enjoy the presence of his temporary tenant, given he couldn't really interact with anyone besides Kurama and Venom. What about my chakra, Kurama? Has that started returning? Naruto asked, while turning to the fox, who nodded once. Yes, it started returning slowly, ever since you arrived in Remnant. Merging with that suit helped to speed up the process a little, though it'll still be a while before you're back to your old chakra reserve levels. But before that happens, you should start working on your chakra control, since that was one of your main weaknesses before losing your memories, Kurama said to its host. Kurama had kept good on its promise to Asura, and would help Naruto, and would admit that the brats earned a little of the Kyuubi's respect with his recent actions. Naruto nodded, while frowning about the part about his memories. He still hasn't recovered from his amnesia, at least not yet. At the moment, Naruto only remembers bits and pieces, along with what Kurama's told him about his life in Konoha. And after hearing everything he went through, Naruto's honestly glad he's not there anymore, or really remembers it. And while Naruto did know there were some people that he did care about there, and they cared about him, Naruto just couldn't bring himself to really care about them now, given he doesn't remember them, and only heard about them from Kurama. Even when, or if, he fully regains his memories, Naruto wasn't sure he'd care about them again, as they'd still just be people he's remembered and heard about. Plus, from what he's heard, the ones that genuinely cared about him were few and far between. The rest were at best acquaintances, while the rest of the village either saw him as a weapon to be used against their enemies, or as a demon and a monster. Granted, after his reveal, Naruto's sure a good number of people in Remnant saw him as a monster now, as well. But unlike with Konoha, Naruto doesn't care who sees him as a monster in Remnant, because it was his choice. Naruto chose to become a monster, one that'll hunt down other monsters and make them feel fear. While the people of Konoha, they treated him poorly, and like a monster, for something he had no choice in. It was the principle of the matter that was important, with the fact that it was Naruto's decision, this time around. Besides, when he became Venom and revealed himself, it wasn't so he could become Mr. Popular, or a hero, it was so that a corrupt company finally got what was coming to it. Okay, I'll start working on a training schedule, after I'm done in Atlas. Naruto replied, wanting to deal with the SDC, before they have a chance to cover up their crimes, and take Jacques down. Whether it was by putting him in the ground, or in a cell, it didn't matter to Naruto. Real world. Opening his eyes, Naruto stood up, as his costume transformed into regular street clothes. Well, let's see what I can find out, Naruto thought, while running a hand through his now white hair. That was another side effect from his dip into a grim pit. His blonde hair was a stark white color, his lightly tanned skin was deathly pale, and his blue eyes were now purple, with black sclera. While his eyes could now unnerve people who see them, Naruto could at least pass them off as a result of his semblance. He's just thankful that the changes weren't too drastic, along with being able to make it so he wouldn't be recognized, on the chance that those SDC workers gave the company leaders his description, so he could be hunted down. The only recognizable part are his whisker marks, which wouldn't be that helpful, since there have been faunas with similar markings. So, Naruto was safe to go outside, and not having to worry of being attacked, followed, or captured. With that, Naruto exited his new home, after making sure no one saw him, and began walking through Mantle. Along with being thankful that it was located in the red light district. With no worries of anyone coming to tear it down. Given how poorly kept, and neglected, this part of the city was. Naruto soon entered a nearby bar, knowing they were good places to gather information. Sitting down at the counter, Naruto looked around, and was thankful to see both humans and faunas, while sensing no ill intent towards the fauna's patrons. The Uzumaki then spotted a newspaper, sitting on the counter near him. Grabbing it, Naruto looked at the front page, and was surprised at what it said. Nicholas Schnee is coming out of retirement, to take over the position of CEO of the Schnee Dust Company. Naruto thought, surprised at this, since he figured Jacques would have found some way to cover up what happened, with the help of his crooked friends on the SDC board. But it looks like they were cutting ties with him, to save their own skin. Looking around the bar, Naruto could now pick parts of conversations, as the patrons talked about this new development. Great to see Nicholas back in control. Yeah, hopefully things will start getting better, with Jacques gone. I heard he's finally going to make a public appearance, after all these years, to officially announce his return. Naruto frowned at what he heard, as while he could agree it's great that a good, honest man, like Nicholas Schnee, was retaking the SDC. As from what he's heard of Nicholas Schnee, he was 100 times better than Jacques, and was the one who built a trustworthy, upstanding reputation for the SDC. That is, until Jacques took over and dragged that reputation through the mud. And something tells me, he won't just walk away, either. Naruto thought, as he felt his spider sense go off a little, telling him that something will happen during Nicholas's public appearance. And whatever it is, he'll be there to stop it. With Adam. Meanwhile, Adam paced around his office in the recently purchased center, where he and his White Fang allies are setting up. With it being large enough to house dozens of faunas, while still having plenty of room to spare. They had just arrived in Mantle 2 days ago, and were in the process of setting up a center, where faunas can come and stay. While the White Fang works on where they can bring them, to live safely. Though after learning of the news, that Nicholas Schnee was retaking his position as CEO of the Schnee Dust Company, it made Adam seclude himself in his office. Tisk, it won't matter if he's in charge of the SDC. It won't matter who's in charge, as long as the corrupt members and elements still exist. Then that company is still the same as it was, under Jacques. Adam said to seemingly himself, before he looked at a mirror in his reflection. But while Adam currently had glowing white eyes, his reflection had his normal blue eyes, showing his dark half was in control and that he was talking with his good half. True, the corrupt members are still around, along with everything else they're doing. But we at least know that Nicholas Schnee cares about all his workers, human and faunus. While it's not much, at least it's a step in the right direction. His good half said, with Adam nodding reluctantly, having preferred it, if he could just level the SDC down to its foundations. But with Nicholas back in charge, he knew that things would at least start getting better for the faunus working there. That didn't mean he'll stop making plans for the SDC, they'll just have to change. Exiting his office, Adam went down to the ground floor, where he saw his fellow White Fang members setting everything up. Blake, Elia, come here for a second. Adam called out to his student and her friend, both of whom had joined him on the trip to Mantle. At first, Gira had been vehemently against letting his daughter and her friend go, especially with the purpose of why Adam was going. Even worse, if they'd somehow get lost, or worse, captured. But after some convincing from Blake and Callie, Gira relented, with Adam swearing to look after them. Is there something you needed, Adam? Blake asked her mentor, as she and Elia ran up to him. There is. I wanted to ask that you both go to the rally event, where Nicholas Schnee will be appearing. I just need you to watch and observe, then report back to me, if anything happens. Adam said, wanting to have eyes on the event, to see what will happen. As while it was being broadcasted to all the kingdoms, they might miss something that they wouldn't have, if they were in person. Yeah, we can do that, replied Blake. We won't fail you, added Elia, both the young girls eager for the chance to help. Good, but make sure to bring your weapons and uniforms, just in case anything happens. And make sure your faces are covered, Adam said, making sure that if something did happen, they could defend themselves and hide their identities. It also helped that the rally was being held in Mantle, since if it was in Atlas, he'd send more experienced members to observe it. Nodding, Blake and Elia went off to get their uniforms and weapons. Time skip 2 days. 2 days have passed since the announcement of Nicholas Schnee's return as CEO of the Schnee Dust Company. With the rally event having now been set up within Mantle, so Nicholas could publicly announce it himself. And the changes he'll be making to the SDC. Every influential family and individual in Atlas had been invited, along with it being open to anyone else, from both Mantle and Atlas. Nico, Loss wanting to show that he wanted to unite everyone in both cities, rather than divide them. The entire Schnee family, minus Jacques, was present, with Willow standing with her 3 daughters, Winter, Weiss, and Wendy, and her son, Whitley. Wendy being her 3rd child, being a year younger than Weiss, and a year older than Whitley. Wendy looked exactly like Weiss had, when she was younger, though kept her hair tied into pigtails and wearing a mix of white, black, and red, rather than the normal white and pale blue, like the rest of her family. And while Willow was happy both at the fact she could see all her children together again, ever since Winter left to join the Atlesian military, and that her father was taking over the SDC again, she was also annoyed by something, as well. That being ever since her father returned, Willow hasn't had been able to get a single drink. Nicholas having shown up, and removed nearly all the alcohol within the manor, only keeping a few bottles that'd be opened for special occasions, only. Not only that, but her father had forbidden the servants from bringing her any wine, whiskey, or any alcoholic drinks. With Willow being an OYED at her father interfering in her life, like that, after being absent for so many years, aside from the rare visit. Even worse, was that he's expecting her to clean up her act to one day take up the position of CEO. Something Willow hadn't wanted to begin with, but now she didn't have a choice in the matter. Well, at least they're happy to see their grandfather again, Willow thought, while looking at her children. Glad that Weiss, Wendy and Whitley have been smiling more often, since Nicholas returned. She could even see that the normally serious and strict Winter was happier. Just then, Willow heard the sound of a cane and footsteps approaching them, making the woman look and see her father. He still looked the same as the last time Willow saw him, long white hair and a white beard. Wearing black dress shoes, matching black dress pants, a black button-up shirt, as well as a bright red suit jacket, with a white trimming and the Schnee emblem on the back. And despite his advanced age and poor health, from his time in the Mantle mines during his youth, Nicholas still had strength in him. Grandfather, said Wendy and Whitley, as they went over to their grandfather. who smiled at his youngest grandchildren. Wendy, Whitley, it's good to see again. How are you both? Nicholas asked. Great. Weiss has been helping me practice my singing, Wendy said, smiling brightly. Having the same love of singing that Weiss did. I am doing fine, grandfather. My studies are coming along nicely. I'm progressing the most in mechanics and engineering, Whitley said proudly. Very good, both of you. Always keep practicing, Wendy, to make sure you were better than you were before. And Whitley, remember that a body is only as strong as the mind within it, advised Nicholas, with the youngest two of the Schnee siblings nodding, as they approached their family. Weiss, Winter, you both look lovely just like your mother, Nicholas said, with Weiss and Winter smiling. Thank you, grandfather, it's nice to see you again, said Weiss, with Winter nodding in agreement. It is, and while I am busy with my duties, if you ever require anything, I'll speak with General Ironwood for assistance, Winter said, having risen through the ranks quickly, and caught Ironwood's eye, who wanted to help Winter reach her full potential. Thank you, Winter. I'm sure that James and I will have much to speak about in the coming years, Nicholas replied, before looking at his daughter. Willow, you look wonderful. Are you all enjoying the rally? Nicholas asked, getting nods from his grandchildren, while Willow rolled her eyes. Yes, it's a lovely event, father. It's just a shame there's hardly any refreshments, said Willow, with Nicholas giving her a stern look. If you require a drink, there is water, and other such beverages, being provided, Nicholas said, having made sure that no wine was being served, to make sure his daughter stayed sober. Of course, I must have missed them, stated Willow with a tense smile. Nick, good to see you, someone said, getting the Schnee family's attention. Looking, they saw it was Obadiah Stain, a member of the SDC board of directors, and his children, his daughter and eldest Whitney, who was the same age as Winter, and his young son Ezekiel or Zeke, who was the same age as Whitley. Obadiah, you as well, said Nicholas, shaking Obadiah's hand, knowing he was one of the few members of the board he could trust, given he's been on it since he first created the SDC. Glad to have you back, Nick. I tell you, the company's gone downhill since Jacques took over, said Obadiah, with Nicholas glancing at his family to see Winter and Whitney talking. Or Winter listening and rolling her eyes as Whitney talked, with Whitley and Zeke speaking, while Weiss and Wendy were asking their mother questions. Yes, but I'm hoping to fix that, Nicholas replied, knowing he had a lot of work to do, if he wanted to get the SDC back to what he made it. Good, but there's something else I need to tell you, Obadiah said seriously, as he leaned in, with Nicholas leaning in as well. Knowing whatever it was likely meant to be a secret. A couple days ago, one of our labs was destroyed, with a scientist found dead. The security footage was destroyed as well, and beyond salvageable, whoever broke in, also stole an experimental flight suit and glider. Obadiah explained, with Nicholas narrowing his eyes at this. I'll look into it, after the rally, said Nicholas, not liking the idea of Schnee technology being in the hands of someone who likely had less than kind intentions. Obadiah nodded, before glancing behind him, and let out a quiet groan. Here come the hunters, muttered Obadiah, with Nicholas looking and knew who Obadiah meant. The Florences. The Florence family had a rather dark history, given their war against the Borgians, the latter of whom used to have a monopoly on the dust trade, until the Schnees took over. While the Borgians were all but wiped out, the Florences were dwindled down to just a single family, and having their last legitimate business being the Florentina Corporation, which centered around machinery development. The last members of the Florence family were the CEO of the Florentina Corporation, Azarin Florence, his wife, Fleur Mirasolale Florence, and their daughter, Natalia, who was the same age as Weiss. Natalia being a friend associates of Weiss's as well, along with the two girls having a rivalry in wanting to see who would be the better huntress. Azarin was an adult man, possessing the orange hair, which was common in his family, with it being pulled back into a ponytail that fell between his shoulder blades, lightly tanned skin, and analytical green eyes. Wearing a typical dark orange business suit, with the Florence emblem on the back. Fleur was a beautiful woman, with the same orange hair as her husband, held up in a ponytail, and curls hanging in front of her face, with pale skin and dark blue eyes. Her attire consisting of a high-class dark blue dress, with gold trimming, as befitting of someone of her stature. Finally, Natalia shared the same long orange hair as her parents, which was kept straight, with it fading into gold near the back of her head, pale skin, and emerald green eyes, while wearing a gold dress that faded to orange at the bottom. The Florence family approached them, as Natalia went over to Weiss, while Fleur exchanged nods with Willow. "Nicholas, good to see you're returning," Azarin said, as they shook hands. "Azarin, good to be back, and glad to see you are good health. I was actually hoping to speak with you after the rally, to discuss a shared venture between the Schnee Dust Company and the Florentina Corporation," Nicholas said, with Azarin narrowing his eyes slightly. "You are aware that my family no longer goes near the dust trade," stated Azarin. Given the last, and only, time his family tried entering the dust trade, it resulted in their current reputation. "Yes, but I meant in other areas, where we could both benefit," Nicholas said, with Azarin looking to think it over, before nodding. "All right, we'll speak after the rally, to discuss this deal," replied Azarin, with Nicholas nodding at his words, before Azarin and his wife had left with their daughter, to mingle with the other guests. "You sure it's a good idea to work with the Florences?" Obadiah asked, knowing that a man like Azarin Florence could be a great ally to have. But one would also have to be careful around him, since he could just as easily shake your hand, while holding a knife in the other, waiting for the right moment to slit your throat. "I'm aware of the risks, but I prefer keeping my potential enemies close, to know what they're planning," said Nicholas, knowing Azarin could be an ally or an enemy, while Obadiah chuckled at his words. "Like I said, it's good having you back," Obadiah said, before he and his children left. After that, it wasn't long until it came time for Nicholas to address the guests, as he went down to a stage on the ground. Once there, Nicholas looked up at a balcony, where he saw his family, Obadiah's, the Florences, and the board members. Nodding to himself, Nicholas turned back to the gathered crowd, to make his announcements. Only to stop, when he heard a strange sound, and from people's expressions, he wasn't the only one. Looking around for the source of the sound, Nicholas soon looked up, and saw something flying through the air. The trail of smoke left behind it, showing it wasn't a grim, but was man-made. "What in the name of the brothers is that?" Nicholas thought, narrowing his eyes, only for them to widen, when he saw it was a man riding a glider. "The glider and the flight suit," thought Nicholas, realizing that this was the person who destroyed the lab, as the person flying the glider laughed loudly, and wickedly, before throwing something at the balcony, where everyone was standing. The moment the objects hit the wall, it detonated in a large explosion, making everyone scream in shock and panic, with the screams only increasing, when the person threw a second bomb at the balcony, causing it to break apart and knock everyone off balance, while sending rubble crashing to the ground. Weiss screamed in shock, when part of the balcony she was standing on destabilizing, and started falling. "Ah, mother!" Weiss screamed in fear and panic, not moving, in case the balcony fell from any sudden movements. "Weiss!" screamed Willow, in fear for her daughter's safety, while pushing Whitley and Wendy back, as Winter slowly edged towards where her sister was, only to immediately stop when the balcony fell further away. Meanwhile, the attacked flew back around and held another bomb. "Out am I!" shouted the stranger, throwing it at the board members, revealing a fist-size orange sphere, which flashed green, before releasing a bright light, with it revealing the board members' charred skeletons, when it vanished. This only making everyone even more terrified at what was happening, with Weiss being the worse, as the balcony shook and destabilizing further. While Natalia broke free from her parents, and ran to the balcony's edge. "Weiss, grab my hand," Natalia said, leaning over and reaching out for Weiss, with the Schnee shakily reaching out to grab her hand. Only for them both to freeze, when they heard an engine over the edge. Looking, the girls froze in fear, when they saw the stranger, and got a good look at them. They were wearing a pure white armored suit, with a matching helmet shaped like a goblin's face, with an open mouth, and red lenses glaring at the girls. They were also flying on a purple glider, shaped like a bat. "Hello my dears," said the white goblin sinisterly, as Weiss screamed in fear that she was going to die. It's Venom, someone shouted, as Venom, in his less beastly form, swung onto the scene. Huh, the goblin said, looking, only to be met with Venom slamming his feet into his chest, knocking the goblin off his glider, where he crashed into a tent, while the glider flew out of control. Venom stuck to the wall, as he narrowed his eyes at the goblin, wondering just where the hell he come from. Hold it right there, one of the soldiers shouted as they aimed their guns at the goblin. I surrender, said the goblin, holding his hands up, only to immediately shove one of them, sending them flying back. The goblin then punched another soldier in the chest, then in the head, knocking them down. Before throwing another one away. The last one he punched out as well, before turning his attention to Nicholas. Nicholas Schnee, I have business with you, Goblin said, pulling out another pumpkin bomb, and threw it at the man, with Nicholas's eyes widened at the bomb flying towards him. Only to be relieved, when a web grabbed it, and launched the explosive into the air. While Venom jumped in front of Goblin. Okay, you reject elf, let's dance, said Venom, throwing a punch, only to be surprised when the goblin caught it. Let's, you annoyance, Goblin retorted, before giving his own punch, sending Venom flying back. Grunting at the hit, Venom righted himself in the air, and launched a web at the goblin, attaching it to his chest. Then with a yank, pulled the goblin towards him. Before clothes lining him, Venom then looked at Nicholas Schnee, who looked at the scene with wide eyes. If you'd follow me, Mr. Schnee, we'll get you out of here, said Venom, figuring Nicholas was the target, and needed to get him away. With Nicholas nodded shakily, still in shock of everything that just happened, only for his eyes to widen, when he saw the goblin flying back towards them. While firing bullets from guns built into the glider, Venom also sensed this, and turned around to intercept the goblin, only to be surprised when someone beat him to it. A girl his age struck the goblin's glider with electrified whip, causing to spark wildly before veering off course. As another girl showed up, being joined by the first, and stood in front of Venom. The first girl had long brown hair, tied in a ponytail, ending in a curve similar to a chameleon's tail. And was wearing a grim mask, with chameleon horns on it, to hide her identity. Her mask also points upward at the top, and extends past her hairline. This resembles the crest of a veiled chameleon. She wears a black, gray and dark gray sleeveless stealth suit, with short legs that resembles a playsuit. With black trim around the legs. The color divide is at the center of her thighs. The stealth suit's zipper is gold, and over it, she wears gray belt straps with gold buckles. She also wears simple black boots, with a cuff, and a black glove on her right hand. While the second girl had long wavy black hair, falling loosely down her back, a pair of cat ears on top of her head, amber eyes, and fair skin. With a black face mask covering the lower part of her face. Her attire consisted of black, gray, and purple shoes, black form-fitting pants that faded to purple at the bottom. A black long-sleeved shirt with a gold zigzag pattern on the front, and a black and gold scarf around her neck. Blake and Ilya hadn't been sure what to expect when they arrived at the rally. But some maniac suddenly flying in on a glider, followed by Venom showing up to fight him, certainly hadn't been something they expected. Though when they saw the goblin go after Nicholas Schnee, the two had run to save him. Knowing if he died, then Jacques Schnee would get control of the SDC again, and that couldn't happen. So, the two girls had put their masks on, and jumped in to help. What are you two doing here? Venom questioned warily, since they were obviously members of the White Fang, and he wasn't sure what their intentions were. We're here to help, Ilya said, with Blake nodding in agreement. We'll get Mr. Schnee to safety, while you deal with that flying lunatic, said Blake, with Venom looking at where the goblin was, before back at the two girls. Though before he could respond, they heard a scream up on the balcony. Looking, they saw both Weiss and Natalia, after falling onto the ledge from the constant shaking, were trapped and would fall any second. Damn it, Venom thought, knowing he had to save them. Go, help them. I trust these young ladies to get me to safety, said Nicholas, wanting his granddaughter and her friend saved. All right, get him out of here. Get him to the army or General Ironwood. Go, Venom said, before shooting a web and swinging up. Nodding, Blake and Ilya began guiding Nicholas through the chaos. searching for any Atlesian soldiers that weren't unconscious, or Ironwood himself. Unfortunately, the two were stopped when 5 Atlesian knights surrounded them, their visors now glowing red. Knowing they were likely hacked, Blake quickly drew Gamble's shroud and shot 3 of the droids in the head, as Ilya drew Lighting Lash and wrapped it around one droid's neck. Before, with a swift tug, decapitated the robot, as Blake threw her cleaver sheath at the last one, burying it in its chest. Seeing the threat was taken care of, the two girls continued guiding Nicholas away, until they ran into Ironwood and a group of Atlesian soldiers. "Mr. Schnee, are you all right?" Ironwood questioned, with Nicholas nodding. Yes, I'm fine. But if not for Venom and these two, I likely would be dead by now," replied Nicholas, as Ironwood looked at Blake and Ilya with narrowed eyes, recognizing their uniforms as part of the White Fang. "If you both leave now, I'll ignore the fact that the White Fang was here," said Ironwood, willing to give them a chance, after their help in saving Nicholas. Nodding, Blake and Ilya quickly ran and left the rally, making their way back to the center to tell Adam what happened. Meanwhile, Venom had swung back up to the balcony to save Weiss and Natalia. But just before he could reach them, the goblin crashed into him, slamming the anti-hero into a window, with Weiss and Natalia screaming as glass fell around them. Venom grunted in pain, as the goblin smashed his head repeatedly into the window, before finally throwing his elbow back into the goblin's face. Before swinging his arm into the Mont's neck, only to grunt in pain, when the goblin punched him in the stomach. Ducking under a swing from the goblin, Venom got behind him and tried grabbing him to throw him off the glider, only to be elbowed in the stomach and face, before the goblin knocked him off the glider and onto the balcony. Looking over the edge, Venom saw Weiss and Natalia struggling to hang on. "Hold on, we'll get you," said Venom, not seeing the goblin dislodge his glider from the window. "Watch out," Weiss shouted, seeing the goblin about to shoot Venom. Venom was surprised when he saw tiny white Nevermores attacking the goblin, before seeing Winter with a glyph in front of her, glaring at the goblin. "Get him, quick," Winter said, wanting the goblin gone so they could save Weiss and Natalia. Nodding, Venom flipped back and under the goblin's glider, before shoving his fist into it, ripping out several wires. This caused the glider to short-circuit, before flying off rapidly. "We'll meet again, Venom," the goblin shouted as he flew away. With the bad guy taken care, Venom looked back at the balcony, only to see it finally give out with Weiss and Natalia falling, much to their family's horror. "Hold on," Venom said, diving off the balcony. Falling through the air, Venom first managed to grab hold of Natalia, before soon managing to grab Weiss, as well. With both girls safely in his grip, Venom shot a web up at the stable part of the balcony. "It's okay, we got you both," Venom assured, as he began lowering them to the ground, as the crowd looked up and cheered. "Patch, ha, see, I told you Venom was a hero, Young," Ruby said, smirking as they watched the events at the rally. Young rolling her eyes in exasperation. Yeah, muttered Young, while crossing her arms. Mantle. The three soon reached the ground, with Weiss and Natalia relieved that they were still alive, and back on solid ground. The girls' families soon came running over, with Willow and Fleur looking their daughters over, making sure they were okay, before hugging them tightly. "I was so worried, I thought I would lose you." "Thank you," Willow said, while looking at Venom, grateful that he saved Weiss. "Thank you, for saving my daughter," said Azarin, with Venom nodding, glad he was able to save them. Weiss and Natalia looked at their savior, thankful he showed up, when he did, to deal with the White Goblin, and save their lives. It also gave them a new view of Venom, seeing him as more than a monster. Though it was then that Ironwood and his soldiers walked up, with the general's eyes never leaving Venom, with the anti-hero doing the same with the general. "The lethal protector, you have my thanks, both for helping save Nicholas Schnee, and taking care of whatever that thing was, along with helping to expose the corruption in the SDC," Ironwood said, willing to give Venom credit for the help he's given. "General Ironwood, you were responsible for leading the raids on SDC property, and helping expose the corruption. We simply gave you the means to do so," replied Venom. With Ironwood nodding at his words, both of them knowing they helped each other, even if unintentionally. Perhaps. But while you may have helped here, today, I'm still a military man. And charged with Atlas's safety, so you'll understand why I can't let you walk away," said Ironwood, putting a hand on his holster, while Venom nodded. "We know, so we won't walk away," Venom stated, before vanishing in a puff of blue smoke, surprising everyone. "All of you spread out, and search the area," ordered Ironwood, in case Venom was still nearby. The soldiers saluted, before they began searching the area for Venom. "Venom, thank you," thought Weiss and Natalia, as their families guided them away from the scene. With the White Goblin. Meanwhile, the White Goblin flew to an old and forgotten property of the SDC, landing his glider on the stand, before getting off. Once off, the Goblin growled in anger, before removing his helmet, revealing Jacques, himself. He wasn't worried about anyone finding his hideout, having already done the necessary paperwork to erase any and all records of it, during his final days as CEO. "Damn you, Venom, and those damn animals in the White Fang," Jacques snarled, slamming his helmet down on a table, leaving a dent in it. While his plan had been a partial success, in that he managed to kill those traitorous bastards on the board, he still failed to kill his father-in-law, both from the interference of Venom and the White Fang. "No matter, I'll have plenty of opportunities to reclaim my rightful place in the SDC. Along with making Venom and the White Fang pay for their interference." Jacques mentally swore. He already planned to kill Venom as well, now he'll make sure to crush that bug beneath his heel. Along with those worthless damn animals. All of them, everyone who gets in his way will suffer the wrath of the White Goblin. "So, what did you think? Good. Yep, we see Naruto first regained control of himself and saw the suit he was wearing, along with seeing he's also awakened his semblance as well, Nightcrawler's teleportation. Then we get a look into his mind-scape where we see Naruto and Venom are slowly merging together, until they'll eventually be one being entirely. Not only that, but Naruto is aware of his past with Kurama having told him, though. This doesn't mean Naruto's going to go running off to find a way back to Konoha, and in fact is glad he was no longer in the elemental nations, now living his life how he wants and make his own choices. We also see Naruto's physical appearance has changed as well from his fall into a grim pit, which definitely won't help him when Salem comes after him, along with learning of Nicholas Schnee returning to the SDC. But knows something will happen when he does. Then it's a look at Adam and his own thoughts while conversing with his good half before sending Blake and Ilya to watch the rally and see what happens. Then it's off to the rally where we see the Schnee family, with the inclusion of a third daughter Wendy, and the introduction of Nicholas Schnee. Along with the inclusion of Obadiah Stane and his own children. Also the Florence family comes from Lightning in My Hands fan and Woe are called Luna. If you want the full background they have a video on YouTube and a DeviantArt page. Then we see the debut of the White Goblin killing the board members and attempt to kill Nicholas, only for Venom to arrive and stop him, with some help from the disguised Blake and Ilya. Along with some help from Winter to get rid of the Goblin, before saving Weiss and Natalia. Finally a confrontation between Venom and Ironwood, with the anti-hero making his escape, while his actions have left quite the impression on those who saw him. Along with seeing White Goblin fleeing to his base where he reveals himself as Jacques, while swearing to deal with Venom and the White Fang for their interference. Now onto the Omake. Omake. A star is born. Lee groaned as he woke up, his sight foggy, before he shook his head, and saw more clearly, that he was now in a medic tent with a relieved Sakura, and an older woman. Looking at him, Lee, shouted Sakura, as she hugged him in relief, making the youthful boy blush, before he shook himself off from the embrace, and looked at his companion. While I'm glad to receive such a wonderful reception Sakura-chan, I must ask what happened, and why am I here? Don't you remember? She asked, as he then started to remember how it all started. After recovering, he was given a mission alongside Sakura and Shikamaru, to help recover a lost pet ferret, but in the process, they ended up assaulted by a literal knight, who wielded some sort of strange power, forcing him to release his weights to keep up, with it ending in a clash between his dynamic entry and the knight's glowing blade, causing an explosion that sent them both falling down a ravine. Then he and Temujin woke up, to find themselves in a moving caravan, led by Kahiko and Amina. Luckily, the ferret, Narigui, had survived the fall, and had taken a liking to Temujin, much to the chagrin of Kahiko. Whom Lee discovered, is the person who ordered the mission. Temujin left the caravan to return to his own party, with Lee in tow. Then at the cathedral, Mujin introduced Lee to a man named Master Hado, who informed them about the Gelul stone, a mysterious powerful mineral that annihilated a lost clan, with Hado planning to get the stone, in order to create a utopia. However, upon receiving word that the invasion in Suna failed, Lee and Temujin headed to the beach, where Gaara defeated Rank and Kamina fled, while Shikamaru and Sakura saved Kahiko from Fugai. Temujin then recalled his past memory, before Shikamaru restrained him, and reunited with the others, with them interrogating Temujin. But he managed to escape, while taking Kahiko hostage, with them leaving the caravan. Soon followed by the group. Flashback. Eventually arriving at the Gelul mine, Lee and his friends confronted Hado for sacrificing anyone in his way. Then, as Hado and Lee pursued Kahiko and Temujin below the platform elevator, Shikamaru, Sakura and Konkuro fought and defeated the now monstrous Kamina and Fugai. At the Chamber of Sealing, Hado revealed to Temujin that he killed his parents, and soon afterwards, destroyed Temujin's stone, which was now revealed to be a fake. But as Hado tried to use his power of the real one to kill him, the sacrificing soldiers arrived to save the repentant Temujin, while Lee unleashed the gates to fight against the now transformed Hado. But finally, as Lee managed to use a Gelul-enhanced lotus to destroy the stone, and defeat Hado, Temujin and Kahiko discovered that the mine was losing control, which led to Temujin using the space-time hole to destroy the mine, with Lee trying to reach out for him. Flashback end. Temujin. Where is he? Lee screamed, as he last recalled him being dragged into the black hole, trying to move only to be stopped by Sakura, due to his weakened status. Is he? Lee asked, having a feeling he knew the answer, but prayed that he was wrong. I don't know, honestly Lee. We have no idea to know where the black hole took him, but even so. Sakura finished, with a shake of her head, as Lee hung his own down, crying, while cursing himself for still not being stronger enough to help another comrade. With Temujin, but unknown to the group at the caravan, Temujin didn't die. Nor did he get crushed into a pulp thanks to, ironically, subconsciously absorbing the Gelul around him to reinforce his body, until he got out of the hole, and went forward. Crashing onto a spaceship, a pirate ship, to be more precise, where he was found, and taken in, by its crew. What the hell is this boy made out of? In fact, where did he even came from? Gaped one of the pirates, as they took a hold of the unconscious knight. Who cares, but this armor, while dented, seems to be worth something. What you think, boss? Asked another, as they saw their leader, Yondu Udanta, a blue-skinned alien, with red eyes, a mechanical red mohawk, and wearing pirate clothing. For now, put him on the medical bay, but restrain him, just to make sure he doesn't try any funny business, and when he wakes up, tell me as soon as possible. He finally ordered, as his crewman said I captain in, and did as told, all while Yondu was wondering what kind of omen would that boy bring to him and his crew. 3 days have passed since the attack at the rally by the White Goblin, as people were now calling him, with it only having been stopped thanks to the appearance of Venom. The latter of whom was now gaining more positive news, thanks to him having fought the White Goblin, along with having saved Weiss Schnee and Natalia Florence. How this still created many concerns for the people of Atlas and Mantle, with there now being 2 superpowered beings running around. Making everyone worried if more were to show up, while wondering what the Atlasian military and council were going to do about it. Leading to a meeting between the Atlas Council, made up of General Ironwood, Councilman Sleet, and Councilwoman Camilla, along with several higher UPS in Atlas, including Nicholas Schnee, with Obadiah having accompanied him, and Azar and Florence, as well as the heads of the Lehonets and Sirens, Topaz Lehonet and Rivers Siren. The Lehonet family and their jewelry company was one of the top earners in Atlas, while the Sirens had a monopoly on the eastern coast of Atlas with their fishing companies. Currently, all of them were meeting to discuss recent events and what they were to do in regards to the White Goblin. General, how could this have happened? Not only does this madman show up out of nowhere and kill who knows how many people at the rally, but was somehow able to hack into the Atlasian Knights. Sleet said, not liking this breach in Atlas's security, especially since they had no idea who the White Goblin could be and where he is now. With all due respect, Councilman, I doubt any of us could have expected a lot of things that have happened recently. Stated Ironwood, given first it was Venom showing up and what he could do. Then White Goblin appearing and attacking the rally. If Ironwood didn't already know about a lot of impossible things after joining Ozpin's group, he'd be more RPRISED and at a loss for what's happening. While I can't say for certain who this White Goblin is, the suit and glider he used came from the SDC. Someone had broken in and stolen both items, just before I retook my position as CEO. So, whoever is in the suit has to have had some knowledge about what it was, and where the suit and glider were located. Said Nicholas, wanting to help make sure the White Goblin was stopped and captured, before anyone else could die. While useful, that doesn't help shorten the list of suspects, especially with how it seemed the Goblin was specifically targeting SDC board members. Meaning that whoever they are, has a grudge against the SDC, which only makes the list longer, given there's no shortage of people who have a grudge against the SDC. Azarin added, also wanting to see the White Goblin taken down after they nearly killed his daughter, if it wasn't for Venom. Especially with recent events. How is it going through all of Jacques' dirty laundry? Nicholas Rivers asked with a slight smirk, with the Schnee giving him an unamused look, but also knew he wasn't wrong. It made Nicholas curse himself and Jacques for nearly destroying the company he built from the ground up. Knowing if news of the treatment of Faunus workers hadn't come to light, then he didn't doubt that Jacques' activities would have eventually lead to the fall of the SDC. How he convinced me to let him take over the company, I'll never understand. Nicholas thought, knowing he only let Jacques take over due to his health problems from his time in the dust mines. And what happens if the White Goblin starts branching out into other companies? How do we know any of us are even safe? Demanded Topaz while looking around, doubting the White Goblin won't stop at just the SDC and may come after their companies as well, or even the council members. Enough. We won't get anything done, sitting here worrying and arguing with each other. Nick, what exactly was the purpose of the suit and the glider, and is there any way of tracking them? Ironwood asked, wanting as much information as they could about what the suit is capable of. From what I've learned about it, the suit and glider were designed to be used by soldiers who didn't have their aura unlocked. Both to protect them and help them move around much more quickly, while making them harder targets to hit. As opposed to flying an airship. As for tracking, as far as I can tell, they were made to be impossible to track. Replied Nicholas, making the general sigh since that didn't really help them. There was one other thing. The facility that the glider and suit were stored in, it was also used to research and recreate the serum used on Captain Arcadia. Obadiah added, making everyone aside from Nicholas, who'd already been informed of this, tense while their eyes widened. Do you mean to tell us, that not only does the White Goblin have this suit and glider, but potentially took a serum to have the same powers as Captain Arcadia? Demanded Sleet, not believing that this could get even worse, all of them knowing Captain Arcadia was one of the deciding factors during the Great War. It was an experimental serum, so while the White Goblin may have enhanced abilities similar to the Captain, he still wouldn't be anywhere near his capabilities. I've also already ensured that any remaining samples of the serum and how it was made have been locked away, where only I can find them. Nicholas said, something that did relieve them slightly. They still tense at the idea of the White Goblin having the same power as Remnant's first superhero. Okay, for now, the best we can do is increase security around Atlas and Mantle, while Mackin. Sure we have everyone on the lookout for the White Goblin and report any sightings of him. The sooner we have this lunatic behind bars, the better, said Ironwood, wanting to capture the Goblin as soon as possible before any more deaths could happen, even more so with this new news of what he could be capable of. And what about Venom? Questioned Camilla, turning the conversation to the other problem they're dealing with. What would you expect us to do? If not for Venom's help, more people would have died, including my granddaughter and Azarin's own daughter. Nicholas said in defense of the vigilante who saved Weiss and Natalia. Agreed. Besides, he was also the one who exposed the SDC workers' treatment of the Faunus. I'd say Venom is simply doing what's necessary. stated Azarin, not seeing any reason for Venom to be dealt with, when so far, he's helped expose the corruption in the SDC, while having also saved his daughter and her friend. He's still a vigilante, something we can't let continue. If Venom keeps taking matters into his own hands, then people will begin losing faith in the Atlesian military's ability to keep them safe. And then what'll happen if he leaves and goes somewhere else? People will be afraid, no longer believing they're safe with him gone. Said Sleet, seeing how Venom's presence could affect things in the long run. Then they'll panic, which will soon draw in the Grim. We'll keep an eye out for Venom as well, if only to ask for his cooperation and ensure he doesn't attack any innocent people, which will show the people that Atlas is willing to work with Venom. Though this leads me to another topic for today, and I'll turn things over to Dr. Polendina, said Ironwood, stepping aside as Pietro Polendina, one of Atlas's best scientists and brightest minds, moved forward in his chair. Ironwood having been meeting with Pietro ever since Venom first appeared, wanting to ensure they had countermeasures to use against the vigilante, in the event he ever started attacking the innocent. Thank you, General. Now then, I think it goes without saying that our world is changing, first with Venom and now the White Goblin. The same thing happened when Captain Arcadia was made and then vanished at the end of the war. Everyone was trying to recreate what was done to him. Now another change has come, only this time. It seems likely that this will be much bigger than any of us could realize, as more superpowered beings appear. How much longer until more like them start showing up? What happens when even our own military isn't enough to counter beings who can either rip them apart, or hack them? Pietro asked before pulling out his scroll and putting it on the table, as it showed a hologram of something he and Ironwood had begun working on. So your idea is to create even more drones? Questioned Rivers, thinking they were looking at a more advanced Atlesian knight. No, not drones or robots. While I do believe that the Atlesian knights help keep the human casualties to a minimum, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that certain situations will always require a human touch. This isn't a robot, it's armor, a shield to help defend Atlas and the rest of Remnant. Ironwood explained, with everyone looking at the hologram in renewed interest. How long would it take to outfit all our soldiers in this armor? Camilla asked, only for Ironwood and Pietro to shake their heads. All the soldiers? Oh no. The general and I both agreed it'd be far too dangerous to allow all the soldiers to wear this armor, especially if it fell into the wrong hands, given what we planned for it to be. No, this armor will go to one person and only one person, said Pietro, since they intended to make the armor capable of turning a single person into a one-man army, with them also keeping the designs and specifics of the armor in their heads, refusing to risk anyone getting their hands on the blueprints or hacking their scrolls. And who's going to be the lucky pilot? Topaz asked, wanting to know who they plan to turn into Remnant's new protector. We haven't decided yet. We intend to hold tryouts among the top soldiers and students in Atlas Academy, someone young, willing to learn, as well as having the physical and mental strength required to wear this. Ironwood said, preferring if they chose someone young as opposed to an older and experienced soldier, given they'd have more time to learn and be more prepared for when the armor was ready. Though one thing he and Pietro agreed on, was that above all else, whoever they choose to wear armor didn't have to be the strongest, fastest, or smartest. What they needed the most was the courage to give their all to help and protect Remnant. Schnee Manor. Meanwhile, at the Schnee Manor, Weiss had been taken care of by her family since the rally and her near-death experience, with only Jacques being missing. Something that Weiss would have normally enjoyed, with Winter being home more often, while her mother's no longer drinking and is actually interacting with them again. But even she had limits on how much she could handle being coddled by her family, and not having any space. I'm fine, really, nothing happened, and I barely even got a scratch, so you don't have to worry about me suddenly breaking, said Weiss to her mother and siblings. I'm sure you are Weiss, but you can't blame us for worrying. We nearly lost you and we just want to make sure you're safe, Willow said, having been terrified when she saw Weiss and Natalia fall, while they were helpless to do anything to save them. With it also making the woman start reflecting on how she's been treating her children lately. thinking of all the lost time between her and her children, while she was busy drowning in her sorrows and self-pity. Having been so close to losing one of them, made her realize how much time she's already lost and didn't want to lose any more. Though Willow knew it's going to be difficult, given how long it's been since she barely even had a full conversation with any of her children. Simply hoping she'd eventually be able to make it up to them. Mother's right. If it wasn't for Venom, then both you and Natalia would be dead right now, along with who knows how many more people if he didn't stop the White Goblin. Said Winter, having hated how helpless she was to save her sister and her friend, along with it being a vigilante that saved them. I'm surprised they didn't work together. Whitley muttered, hating Venom for being the reason their father was barely around anymore, if at all. There's no way Venom would work with the Goblin. He's the coolest hero there is. With how he went to save Grandpa while knocking the Goblin off his glider. And then when he went to save Weiss and Natalia by jumping after them. Said Wendy, looking at her brother with narrowed eyes, not believing he'd even think that Venom would work with the White Goblin. The young girl seeing Venom as a hero for saving their grandfather along with their sister. Making her then look at Weiss with an eager grin. What is he like up close, like that? Was he really strong? What did you think when he caught you? Ooh, was he really gentle when he held you in his arms? Wendy asked eagerly, wanting to know more about Venom, not seeing Weiss freeze while her face started turning red. What? Said Weiss, not believing what her little sister just insinuated. Was Venom gentle when you were with him? Come on, I wanna know, though is it hard to tell since you and Natalia were both with him? Questioned Wendy, with Weiss's face now a bright red color. What? Weiss said, even more embarrassed by Wendy's words. I said, Wendy said, only for Weiss to quickly cover her mouth, not wanting to be further embarrassed, while Willow and Win Chair were amused at Weiss's usual composure falling apart at her sister's words. HMPH, well, I suppose you could do worse, but you could definitely do better. Stated Whitley, making Weiss glare at him in annoyance. Though unknown to the family, they were watched a hidden Jacques, the former CEO, scoffing at the sight before turning away to contemplate his loss against that freak Venom. Single quote, it seems the bug will be a bigger problem than I anticipated. I'll need to find ways to gain more power from the serum to ensure the next time we meet, I'll crush Venom beneath my foot for interfering in my plans. Thought Jacques, before contemplating how to gain more power aside from the super soldier serum, knowing that won't be enough to deal with Venom. Before he remembered one of his secret projects he'd been working on, making the man gain a dark smirk as a new plan began forming in his mind. With Jacques then going off to call in a debt that was owed to him. Later, with Naruto. Naruto walked through the streets of Mantle, now wearing regular clothes consisting of a black, hooded jacket that he kept unzipped, with short sleeves, gold buttons, and a checkered pattern at the hem. Underneath, he wore a burnt orange long-sleeved shirt with a V-neck, as well as a pair of dark blue cropped trousers, that are hemmed with the same checkered pattern as the jacket, black fingerless gloves on each hand, and black high-top boots. At the moment, the amnesiac Uzumaki was conversing with both his tenants on the events at the rally. So, now we have a flying madman to deal with, along with the corrupt officials. Isn't that fantastic? What about you two? Any thoughts about this and how we can deal with the White Goblin? Thought Naruto, wondering if they had any ideas on how they can deal with the White Goblin. We don't have any ideas at the moment. Though before we arrived, it seemed as if this White Goblin was targeting members of the SDC. Meaning, this person likely has a similar goal to our own. Venom replied as they saw how the White Goblin targeted the SDC board members before going after Nicholas. Are there another corrupt member, Hat's simply trying to cover their tracks by taking out anyone who could rat them out, while also taking any attention off them by killing Nicholas. Allowing them to make an escape with everyone panicking over his death and when the next attack would be. Said Kurama as that made more sense, given how the goblin didn't seem concerned in regards to who died during the attack. That would make sense. So either way, if I follow Goblin, then I'll find other corrupt members to put down or expose. Though it seemed like he was also targeting the rest of the Schnee family as well, so it may be good if I kept an eye on them. Just in case he does attack them. Naruto said mentally. Yes, I'm sure you'd like keeping an eye on them, given how tightly you held onto those two girls. Not to mention, I'm sure the other Schnee women would want to thank you for saving the girl," said Kurama with a smirk, while Naruto raised a brow. "Yeah, I held onto them tightly so they wouldn't end up falling. And they already did thank me for saving her," thought Naruto, confused as the fox's words. "Ignore the flesh bags. We should be focused on putting the goblin in the ground, not potential food." Venom growled, refusing to have its host's attention on the Schnee women or Florence Eris. At the mention of food, Naruto's stomach growled, much to his embarrassment, given he hadn't eaten in a while. Only to tense slightly at hearing an amused chuckle nearby, before he looked to see where it came from and saw 4 women. The first is a young woman with tanned skin and violet eyes. Her light blonde hair is tied in a ponytail. She has a beauty mark under her right eye and another one on the left side under her mouth. Her attire consisted of a black sleeveless coat with gras Y accents over a red double-breasted sleeveless vest, a brown high-neck shirt, and a light gray short-sleeved shirt with one right short sleeve that has a black cuff whilst the other sleeve is longer. She also wears a brown belted waist clincher with matching brown pants tucked into black knee-high boots with dark brown cuffs. Around her neck she wears an olive green scarf with tattered-looking tails hanging behind her. She also wears a pair of black archery-styled gloves with the index finger missing on both of them, with her weapon being a small crossbow strapped to her left arm. He second is a faunus with short and messy swept-styled white hair and olive eyes. She has sheep ears as her faunus trait with a small hoop earring on her left ear and a small bell earring on her right ear. She was wearing an olive green sleeveless coat with dark brown lapels with a bird brooch on the left lapel. She sports a green long-sleeved shirt with a white-orange trimmed breastplate over it. She wears an orange belt, which holds her coat tightly around her waist. She also wears dark brown pants tucked into gray under-the-knee boots with the tops folded over revealing the white lining. The soles and toes of the boots are a darker gray. She also wears dark fingerless gloves accompanied by white and gray forearm armored pads with the left arm covering up to her upper arm, whilst the right only partially covers her forearm. The third is a fair-skinned woman with medium blue hair, a long ponytail wrapped in white bandage-like fabric, and yellow eyes. She was wearing a dusty brown coat with a small split in the rear, dark brown lapels with a bird brooch emblem on the right lapel over a gray waistcoat and dark brown top. She also wears dark brown shorts alongside matching forearm-length gloves. She also wore gray armor padding over her forearms and the backs of her hands, alongside a pair of gray thigh socks and dark brown thigh-high boots and an orange scarf. And the fourth is a tall, tan-skinned woman with masculine features and short dark green partially spiked hair, beige eyes and tattoos on her nose and forehead. She wears a cocoa brown coat, with dark brown lapels and white trim and hem detail over a light beige long-sleeved top. She wears artichoke green and white armored pads with emerald green straps on her arms alongside brown gloves. She sports a pair of brown trousers tucked into black boots with emerald green cuffs. She also wears a light gray and pale green breastplate that sports the bird brooch emblem that the other women were wearing in the center. "Can I help you for?" Naruto asked warily, seeing they were looking at him. "Sorry for staring, but given how loud your friend there is, I'm guessing you haven't eaten in a while," said the first woman with an amused smirk on her face, making Naruto blush lightly in embarrassment. No, I've just been busy and didn't have the time," Naruto replied, not wanting to draw attention to himself. "It's fine, a lot of people here in Mantle have trouble trying to get by sometimes, especially now. By the way, I'm Robin Hill and these are Fiona Time, May Marigold, and Joanna Greenleaf. We're the Happy Huntresses," Robin introduced, thinking that he was homeless, which wasn't far from the truth. "Nice to meet you," said Fiona while smiling at Naruto. "Hey," May said with a short nod. "Greetings," said Joanna with a nod as well. Nice to meet you, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And what do you mean by Happy Huntresses?" questioned Naruto, confused at the name. "It's something the people of Mantle have been calling us. We were all once members of Atlas Academy and the top of our classes, but we decided to leave after graduating and help Mantle. Given that no one else has been trying to," Robin replied, with the other huntresses nodding in agreement, given they wanted to help Mantle since the people of Atlas haven't made the effort to do anything. Oh, well, that's pretty cool, and I'm sure Mantle is happy to have you helping. But I should get going. It was nice to meet you," said Naruto, now wanting to get away from the four of them. Since if they're well known in Mantle, and potentially Atlas, he'd prefer not being seen with them, wanting to keep a low cover. "You don't have to worry, Robin doesn't discriminate against Faunus, and neither do May or Joanna," Fiona said, smiling reassuringly at Naruto, seeing his whisker marks, and thinking he was a Faunus that wasn't trustful to humans. "Fiona's right. If you want, we even know of a place that we can take you to, that you can stay at for a while. There will be plenty of other Faunus there as well," said Robin, making Naruto look at them, unsure if he should accept the offer. "I'm not really sure. I don't do good with crowds," said Naruto, only for his stomach to growl again, much to his embarrassment. "You sure you still don't want to come? Worst case, you can leave if you don't like the place or feel uncomfortable," May said with a shrug, with the Uzumaki letting out a sigh before nodding. "Okay, what is this place, anyway?" Naruto asked, figuring it wouldn't hurt to go with them, since he could sense that their intentions were kind and he was getting hungry. "It's a center that's recently opened up for Faunus, that don't have anywhere else to go. Where they can eat, sleep, help, and get away from less kind citizens. They're also accepting volunteers for anyone willing to help around," replied Robin, having been planning to have her huntresses volunteer to better help the Faunus in Mantle, only waiting until they'd gotten more settled in and more trusting. Nodding at this, having heard about a shelter being opened up for the Faunus. Naruto followed the happy huntresses through Mantle, seeing some of the citizens smiling and waving at the huntresses, showing they even had a following among the Mantle citizens. "Guess they really do want to do everything they can to help Mantle," thought Naruto, seeing the happy huntresses were loved and admired by the people of Mantle. It wasn't long before they arrived at a large shelter, with Naruto seeing a sign above the entrance with F.E.A.S.T. on it, food, emergency aid, shelter, training, thought Naruto, seeing the words beneath F.E.A.S.T. before he and the happy huntresses went inside. "With Blake, you both did good at the rally, helping to save Nicholas Schnee and fighting off those knights that the goblin hacked. It'll go a long way in building up the White Fang's reputation here in Solitas. Something I'm sure Gira will be happy to hear," said Adam to Blake and Ilya, his eyes lacking the dark gaze his dark half has, showing his good half was in control at the moment. Blake and Ilya both felt a mix of pride and embarrassment at being praised by Adam, along with the other Faunus and the few human workers volunteers. The latter group having joined F.E.A.S.T. either due to genuinely wanting to help the Faunus or seeing more work opportunities. It was nothing, really. We didn't do much," Ilya said as she started turning pink. "Why yeah, we just took care of a few robots. Venom's the one who saved Mr. Schnee from the goblin," said Blake, doubting they would have been able to take on the goblin like Venom could. "Still, you both made sure he got out of there alive and safe, along with knowing the Faunus are willing to help him," Adam stated, several other Faunus nodding in agreement, all of them knowing that Nicholas Schnee would be a much better CEO for the SDC than Jacques had been. Everyone soon got back to work around the center, before taking notice of the happy huntresses and Naruto arriving, getting Adam's attention as he went over to them, along with Blake, Ilya, and some of the other White Fang members. "Is there something you all needed?" Adam asked, looking at them suspiciously, ready to draw his sword if needed. "Yes, we were hoping to volunteer and help around here. I'm Robin Hill and these are Fiona Time, Joanna Greenleaf, and May Marigold. And this is Naruto Uzumaki. We found him and saw he needed a place to stay," said Robin, making Adam look at Naruto with a raised brow. "What exactly kind of Faunus are you?" said Adam, given he's seen plenty of different Faunus with whisker marks, but they also usually have more identifiable traits like ears or a tail. "Fox Faunus," Naruto said with eyes briefly Florida's, hing red with slit pupils while his nails grew into claws, making a few Faunus look at him warily, along with the happy huntresses. He could be some kind of new, mutant or evolved Faunus, being able to hide the more obvious traits, not to mention the eyes. One of the White Fang guards said to Adam, who nodded slowly. I guess so. Though I'm able to always see better in the dark, no matter what color my eyes are, and I can hear a lot of things too. Also, I won't expect to stay here for free, so I can help out around or go out and bring other faunus here," said Naruto, deciding to go with that, along with wanting to help around as well. "Okay, Trifa, Yuma, show these 4 around and then put them to work," Adam said to 2 of the White Fang's enforcers, knowing if the happy huntresses tried anything, they'll be able to deal with them, with Trifa and Yuma nodding. Trifa is a young girl with blue eyes and medium-length blue hair, covering her right eye. She has pale skin, pronounced gray veins on her chest and arms, and gray-colored hands. She wears a black and dark gray uniform with gold buttons and zipper, with her front zipper is left open, revealing her upper chest. Yuma is a tall male bat faunus with spiky brown hair and a goatee. He wears a black and dark gray uniform with gold buttons and zipper like the rest of his enforcers. He has brown bat wings on his back. "Let's go and try to keep up, we don't have time to waste," Trifa said, motioning the happy huntresses to follow her and Yuma, with Naruto doing a double take when she turned around, showing a white spider symbol on the back of her uniform. "Blake, Ilya, show Naruto around as well and help him get settled," said Adam, the 2 girls nodding as they went up to Naruto. "Come on, we'll show you where everything is. Also, if you do want to volunteer and help around, then you'll be staying in one of the upper floors," Blake said while motioning Naruto to follow her and Ilya. "Just don't think about slacking off. We're all expected to pull our own weight," said Ilya, looking at Naruto with narrowed eyes, with the Uzumaki nodding in response. "I won't. Though the girl back there, Trifa, what was with the spider symbol on her uniform? 'Cause it looked kind of like the one on..." Naruto trailed off, wondering why she had his spider symbol on her uniform. "The one on Venom. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. Trifa's a spider faunus, which gives her spinnerets in her hands to create spiderwebs. And after Venom's first appearance and how he helped expose some of the corruption in the Schnee Dust Company, she put the symbol on her uniform as a show of pride at another spider faunus helping our kind. Though she'd also begun making Venom clothing for the younger faunus here, who were starting to look up to him," said Blake, surprising Naruto at hearing Trifa's a spider faunus. "She thinks Venom's a spider faunus?" Naruto asked, making Ilya roll her eyes. "What else could he be? There's no way a human would do what he did to help the faunus, and he's able to stick to walls and shoot webs like a spider. So, it'd make sense he's a spider faunus," Ilya said, with the Uzumaki nodding slowly, while not complaining if people thought Venom was a spider faunus. "I guess that makes sense. Also, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, it's nice to meet you both," Naruto introduced, smiling at them and held out his hand, which Blake shook. Blake Belladonna, it's nice to meet you to Naruto," replied Blake before looking at Ilya, who reluctantly shook his hand. "Ilya Amitola," said Ilya, with Blake giving Naruto an apologetic look. Despite not showing it, Blake knew her friend had a hard time being back in Mantle and near Atlas. Given what happened to her parents, with how they died in mining accident while her former classmates and friends laughed about it. So she had a hard time trusting anyone from Mantle or Atlas, even other faunus. "Nice meeting you both, and if you don't mind me asking, what kind of faunus are you both?" questioned Naruto, only being able to tell that Blake had a pair of ears beneath the bow on her head, with how it twitched every now and then. "It's fine, and I'm Catafaunus. I just prefer keeping my ears hidden to better blend in and get around, without drawing attention to myself," replied Blake, enjoying how easily she can fool people with a little black bow. "That's cool, and it's a pretty smart way to hide in plain sight like that," Naruto said, smiling at Blake, which she returned. "And are you like a lizard faunus?" said Naruto, looking at Ilya curiously, the brunette looking at him with wide eyes. "How did you know that?" said Ilya, "since it's impossible for anyone to even think she's a faunus, unless she changes colors. The spots on all over your skin, they look kind of like the patterns on some types of lizards," Naruto said, making Ilya look at her spots, knowing that most people wouldn't be able to tell what they were, and would just think they were freckles. "Well, Yeah, I'm a chameleon faunus, Ilya said, not seeing any reason to hide it. Really? Can you change color? Questioned Naruto, with Ilya simply turning her hair white, her eyes red, and her skin pink in response. That's awesome. You'd really be able to hide in plain sight with an ability like that, and even if someone sees you, you could lose them by changing your hair, eyes, and skin color to something else. You could even camouflage in places by matching the surrounding colors. Especially at night if you wear all black, or blue if you're in an area that doesn't suffer from light pollution. You have a really awesome ability, Ilya, Naruto said, smiling at the brunette, making her look at him in surprise before she quickly looked away. Thanks. You have cool abilities too, being able to hide most of your traits, replied Ilya, not used to hearing anyone praise her faunus trait, given how everyone else is so used to it, that it's not really surprising. Yeah, my dad's kind of like that too, having retractable claws is his trait. Though are your eyes another trait? Blake asked, looking at Naruto's eyes, having never seen anyone with eyes like that. No, that actually happened when I first activated my semblance, which lets me teleport anywhere I've been. Or can see, replied Naruto, with both girls nodding. My semblance lets me make shadow clones of myself to avoid attacks and push me in any direction I want. I can also use dust to give them added effects. Blake said, I can heal faster than normal and reattach anything that's cut off, as long as I do it quick enough and have enough aura to fully heal them, said Ilya, making Naruto nod at their semblances, seeing how useful and powerful they can be. Out of curiosity, why did the White Fang set up a homeless shelter here in Mantle? Questioned Naruto, finding it strange that the White Fang would be here. It's actually meant to be a temporary refuge for all the faunus here, until they're able to properly leave elsewhere. Given everything that's happening here, Blake said, wanting to help get all the faunus out of Mantle and Atlas. And deal with anyone that tries stopping us, Ilya muttered darkly, knowing anyone that does try stopping them would just want to use the faunus for their own gain. That's really great, since they deserve a chance to settle down somewhere safer and away from all this, especially with the White Goblin running around now. And you two must be really brave and strong to come here and want to help, replied Naruto as he smiled at them, which Blake returned, while Ilya had a small smile and nodded. Later, after Blake and Ilya showed Naruto around the shelter, he began helping both girls with their responsibilities, which mainly just consisted of moving supplies or helping any of the faunus staying with any problems they had, with Naruto having also seen the happy huntresses occasionally helping around as well. It wasn't long before they stopped to have lunch, with Naruto getting something called ramen, which he seemed to vaguely recall having before. The Uzumaki shrugging before he took a bite of the ramen, only for his eyes to widen at the taste. Is something wrong, Naruto? Blake asked, looking at him at seeing he was frozen, only for her and Ilya's eyes to widen in shock when suddenly, the whiskered boy devoured the entire bowl of ramen, before seemingly teleporting and having a new one, which vanished just as quickly, and just as quickly was replaced again. Where did you get that? Questioned Ilya warily and blinking slowly, only to be CKED when she saw that there were now suddenly 5 empty bowls rather than 2. The kitchen, Naruto said while eating his 6th bowl of ramen, much to the girl's disbelief, which only grew with each bowl of ramen Naruto ate. I'm guessing you like ramen, Blake stated, wondering how he could eat so much. Yeah, it's really great. I also saw this stuff, which looked really good, replied Naruto, pulling out some chocolate bars he grabbed and ate one, surprised at the taste and how good it is. Give us more, or we will eat the flesh bags, Venom said at Ta, sting the chocolate as well and loving the taste of it, now wanting even more. Fucking perfect, I have to deal with 2 of them now, Kurama thought, having specifically avoided telling Naruto about his obsession with ramen, simply to avoid the boy eating dozens of bowls of it again. Now the Biju had to deal with that again, along with now Venom obsessing over chocolate. So, what do you think of staying here, Naruto? Ilya asked after taking the time to get over her shock at how much Naruto was eating, with Naruto pausing for a moment. I'm not sure since I don't want to impose. Especially since you need all the room you can, with all the faunus here in Mantle. replied Naruto, not sure about staying in the shelter. You wouldn't be imposing since you're a faunus too. Besides, if you don't have anywhere else to go, then you'd be more than welcome to stay here. Plus, you already offered to help around and it'd be easier if you were here full-time than needing to travel here every day. Blake pointed out, making Naruto frown since he couldn't fault that logic. Though he was still hesitant given he didn't want to risk anyone seeing Venom coming or going to the shelter if he needed to suit up, which could lead to it being targeted. But he also did want to try and do some good outside of his suit as well. I'll think about it, Naruto said, with both girls nodding as they resumed eating. Outside, though unknown to everyone in the shelter, the building was being watched by multiple soldiers wearing all black uniforms with no distinguishing features, logos, or symbols, along with wearing masks to cover their faces and night vision goggles over their eyes. With the soldiers either being on the rooftops around F.E.A.S.T. or in black vans in nearby alleyways. Sir, we're at the target location, there don't seem to be any guards outside. How should we proceed? One of the soldiers said into a radio to their superior. Engage the subjects. Neutralize and capture as many of them as you can. Whether they're human or faunus it doesn't matter. Fall back when you've captured enough. We don't need the military being alerted or giving them time to retaliate. Replied their superior. Understood, said the soldier before signaling to the others to begin making their move. F.E.A.S.T. Asterisk. Back inside, Naruto, along with several other faunus, all stiffened at feeling something suddenly change around them, with the Uzumaki feeling his spider sense tingling and warning him of danger. Though before any of them could react, several objects were thrown into the windows, revealed to be flash grenades, smoke grenades, and sound grenades when they either released a bright flash of light, exploded into clouds of smoke, or began emitting a high-pitched sound. The flashes causing several faunus to cry out and cover their eyes, while the sounds brought more of them to their knees while covering their ears. Naruto included as Venom shrieked in pain at the high-pitched noises. The White Fang and Happy Huntresses tried going for their weapons as masked soldiers broke into the shelter and began grabbing people, or shooting them with tranquilizers, knocking them out, while a few of them managed to recover and take down some of the soldiers, but it wasn't long before they began being overwhelmed. Growling at the sight of what's happening, Naruto prepared to teleport away to suit up as Venom and deal with whoever these guys were, along with finding out their purpose of being here. But before he could, Naruto grunted as one of the soldiers struck him in the back of the head, before the Uzumaki only saw darkness. So, what did you think? Good. Yep, we see a meeting between the Atlas Co. UNCIL and Higher UPS to discuss the attack at the rally, with many being worried at the goblin's appearance and the powers he could have. Before we see Ironwood and Pietro have begun preparing a new PR project to create a new hero to protect Atlas and Remnant, a certain armored hero. Then we see Naruto meeting the Happy Huntresses who take him to F.E.A.S.T. after seeing he had nowhere to go, leading to Naruto meeting Blake and Elia, only for things to quickly take a bad turn when the shelter is attacked by unknown assailants who kidnap several faunus and humans, including Naruto. Now then we have another omake. One that'll show where another hero will be coming from. Omake. Law of the Jungle. Trekking through the desert of Menagerie was a team of 5 White Fang members, the team having been sent out by Gira in order to locate something they've been trying to find for decades. Why did the chief even send us out here to find? What even could be out here to find, that's so important? Questioned the youngest member of the team, not understand why they'd been sent out into the deserts of Menagerie, when as far he knew, the only things out here were grim and dangerous wildlife. Don't ask stupid questions, we all know why we're here and what we're trying to find. Another member said, much to the annoyance of the first. It's not a stupid question. The only things out here are the grim and animals that want to rip us apart. Not to mention sand for miles around us, retorted the first member, making the other 4 look at him in surprise. How long have you even been in the White Fang? Or on Menagerie for that matter? Questioned the leader of the team, knowing that everyone on Menagerie is aware of why they send teams out into the desert, and what they're trying to find. About 5 months ago and I arrived on Menagerie nearly 2 months now. The member replied, with the rest of the team now understanding why he wasn't aware. Then you don't know about the metal the faunus first found here. Sorry, I thought you already heard about it, said the second member. What metal? Questioned the youngest member as they continued their trek. A one-of-kind metal that can't be found anywhere else. It was first discovered by the first faunus that arrived on Menagerie after the Great War. Despite how they saw this so-called reward as a slap to the face and simply dumping us where they didn't have to see us anymore, they still tried making the best of their situation. Trying to set up settlements and villages, only to encounter the wildlife and grim, which nearly wiped out all the faunus. That is until one day, they happened upon a unique metal that glowed blue and possessed even more unique qualities. The stuff was practically indestructible, but they managed to find a way to mine it and turn it into a more malleable metal that they could turn into weapons. Weapons they used to finally start creating a settlement, without worrying of being attacked. Not only that, but wherever this stuff is buried, it helps enrich the soil and plant life around it, making it easier to grow stuff. Unfortunately, metal eventually ran out and we've been trying to find more ever since, but only managing to find bits and pieces, forcing us to go out further to locate larger deposits. Explained the leader, much to the younger member's surprise. And this stuff can't be found anywhere else? Asked the member, getting nods from the others. As far as we know, it's only been found on Menagerie, which is why we prefer keeping it a secret from the other kingdoms. Given if they knew an indestructible metal existed here, they'd try locating and mining it themselves. Despite how we were given the entire island and everything on it. Replied the fifth member. Okay, but how do we even locate this stuff? The first member said, with the leader holding up a small device in response. This is something Chief Gira's been working on. A tracker to locate where the metal's buried. It's managed to find some smaller veins near Kuokuana before, now we're hoping it'll find a bigger one. Replied the leader, just as the tracker began beeping and pointing straight ahead, showing it's picked up traces of the metal. Seeing this, the team quickly began running towards the signal, climbing up a mountain as they did so. Until they arrived at the mouth of a giant cavern. Entering the cavern, the team soon landed a ledge and looked around the seemingly empty cavern. Only for the leader to pull out his sword and strike the wall. Before, to the amazement of the faunus, a wave of blue light erupted from the point of impact. The light traveling all throughout the cavern, going much farther than they could see. What did you say this metal was called? Questioned the first member in amazement, as the leader looked around with a smirk at how much of the metal there was. We call it vibranium. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.